Streaming. Turn the mute off. So we should now be coming through live on the old YouTube side of things. Good. All right. Sweet. Looks like maybe have somebody in the chat. It's always hard to say, but yeah, we're here for another episode of Dark Tower Palaver. Did change the name of the episode. We got the Unfound door for the Institute. So yeah, let's just go ahead and hit the intro. I don't have a special intro for Unfound doors. It's always been a thought I've had, but never really pursued it necessarily.
Go and grab clips from like a bunch of different stuff.
Yeah, well, the Unfound door is what, book 7 or not 7? 5. Yeah.
5 and 6, big part of 6.
Yeah, but like the revelation of it, like the description and everything like that. So yeah, probably next time I'm going through there. Which actually, you know what I realized recently? I'm midway through a Dark Tower read right now. I've been slightly sidetracked because of some other things, the Institute being one of them. But I basically gave up on the audio for Went Through the Keyhole. I just can't.
No.
I think I've got to buy it on Kindle and then read through that, because this is the one of the first times ever I've gone through and went through the Keyhole and it's a proper spot. So I need to just get it on Kindle, read through it, and then start into book 5. So I guess I could be, by the next time we do an episode like this, I might have an intro put together.
Maybe.
I don't know. All right, so let's go ahead and hit the normal intro and then get started on the Institute.
The Dark Tower by Stephen King. The man in black fled across the desert, and the gunslinger followed. Go then. There are other worlds than these. Death, but not for you, gunslinger. It's time we had our own palaver, I think, and it's going to take a while.
And yet, dauntless, the slug horn to my lips I set, and blew. Child Roland to the Dark Tower came.
We are quartet, one from many. The palaver begin.
Hello and welcome to Dark Tower Palaver. This is our podcast covering Stephen King's Magnum Opus, the Dark Tower series. My name is Tad.
And I'm Peter.
And we're here for, I guess this is going to be I'm not numbering these, but it would be the 4th Unfound door. Because you and I have done The Stand. I did, I did The Shining and I did The Salem's Lot. But Carrie, I've had the idea after reading Carrie, so I haven't actually done an episode for Carrie with the original idea. So, yeah, this is
we did The Outsider, didn't we?
No, we talked about it.
We talked about it, but we never actually did it. Okay.
Which, that's whatever. I mean, ultimately, so yeah, this is the 4th one, and we're covering the Institute. And unfortunately, I don't have a title card yet. We have the calendar next on the old slides if you're in the YouTube side, and then I have like the title card for it. I didn't think about doing one, so it still says show will begin momentarily, even though we've started. So first of all, I want to warn you about spoilers. We're going to talk about the entire book of the Institute here, and as well as the Dark Tower series. I wouldn't necessarily put out any, I wouldn't say listen to this episode if you haven't read all of the Dark Tower books, because we're us and things tend to come up. So
it's Tangent City is where this podcast lies.
Yeah, and I mean, ultimately, where this connection, because we talked about when this book was announced and they told us the synopsis for it. We talked about it just seemed obvious for a connection to Dark Tower, and that's late in the series stuff that it would connect. So like it just seems to me like we're not going to be like, oh, let's piddle around in a little bit of chat in the book 1. No, we're going to end up in the second half of the series. So if you haven't finished it, stick to our book club episodes. But we're going to talk about the Institute. Somebody actually even tweeted and asked about timestamps. And I'm just like, I don't think it's going to help because we're not very linear. No, our podcasts never tend to be linear. And I was trying to like remember like the stand, how we did the stand, and I think we kind of more took it in bites in terms of like from kind of in like stabbed into the series through different angles and different characters, different things, and it caused us to like be all over the place. It wasn't like we progressed through the podcast as the book progressed. And I said the only caveat to that, the only time we're linear is our book club episodes, and those it's because that's pretty much the point of those episodes is
it's
how they're structured.
Yeah,
to go line by line of the books. So that kind of forces us to be linear. So these aren't linear necessarily. So and I told him that on Twitter. I'm like, I don't think I can. And the more I've done the rest of the prep on this, I think it's going to be a little bit more helter skelter and less flow through the book type thing. So definitely want to warn about spoilers, but that's okay. And I'm guessing there's going to be some listeners, even some of our regular listeners, that are probably listening to this sometime in the future because they haven't read it yet, which is totally fine. I mean, heck, there might be people listening to us now that know more about the Dark Tower Amazon series than we do because they're in the distant future there, maybe 6, 8, 10 months, 12 months from now.
That's true. Yeah.
So, and that's fine. One thing I've definitely, I don't know if it wasn't like, it hasn't been like an outcry by any means. And I even threw out like the question on Twitter and had some reactions on both sides. Some people are like, oh yeah, I'm glad, I want to hear you guys talk about it. Other ones are like, yeah, I haven't had a chance to read it yet. But ultimately, I think my takeaway is I think in general, we'll probably wait at least 6 months before Unfound Doors in the future from a release to give everyone at least that, even that to maybe even a year, 6 months to a year after a release, just because ultimately you and I have mostly converted to audiobook just because the way life is, it's easier with audiobooks. That like for instance, both of us have read since our last podcast, we've reread this book, and listen, I still call it reading because you're still consuming it, but like we've gone through it a second time. There's no way I would have been able to actually go through physically. I probably wouldn't have even had it done reading it the way that my schedule in life looks right now. I would have got through it the first time by now, let alone been through it twice. Right. So, definitely, totally get that, and that's definitely a lesson I learned here. And in the future, we'll make sure that we're, I don't know, like
a little bit further out from it, so that we can have more. Not more fans interacting necessarily, but definitely want it to be, it's the same reason why we are not doing our Dr. Sleep episode.
Yeah, exactly.
Today.
Yeah, we're not doing
because that literally released
yesterday.
So we need to give it a little bit more time. And we talked about this, is that we already had announced the Institute, and we decided to still go forward with it because we know a lot of people, like you said on Twitter, were still wanting to hear about it. Still wanting us to talk about it.
Yeah.
But in the future, we decided that it is the best that we give a little bit more time, especially with a novel.
Yeah.
We already know our schedules are crazy.
Yeah.
And we may have the ability to listen to audiobook. Other people don't.
Yeah.
So we want to be able to include a little bit more fans than what we probably got with this one. So we made the decision that at least 6 months.
Yeah, 6 months minimum.
At least.
And then potentially it may even be more in the realm of a year. Now, I haven't really even passed this by you yet because I love springing things on you.
It's what you do.
But what do you think? Because I was thinking about it last night. What do you think about even calling these like not as like more regular, but obviously not as because we only have so many episodes per year. But what if we said let's do 2 Unfound Doors a year?
Yeah.
Because this year we will have done 2 actually. We did the stand this year actually.
What about Castle Rock? Was that last year?
I don't know if we called that.
Called an Unfound.
No, we called that a round table. But
Did we?
Yeah. I mean, we probably should have called it an Unfound Door, but the only reason I know is because I searched it because I was going through and figuring out why my checklist was off from the Unfound Door count that I had, and that's when I remembered. Oh yeah, shit, I didn't do Carrie because I had the idea right after I finished reading Carrie. I was midway through Salem's Lot, and I was like, Unfound Door, that'd be a great episode, a great thing for the podcast. So, so we did that one. Maybe should have been an Unfound Door, and maybe Castle Rock season 2 will be. But we did the stand this year, and then we did this one this year. But I just think that 2 is a good maybe number, like 1 early in the year, 1 late in the year, and just kind of have a commitment that we'll at least do that. Yeah. Just like we kind of bounce back and do book clubs regularly. Yeah. Otherwise, we neglect them, and I think we've definitely neglected Unfound Doors a tiny bit. I mean, we did do the stand this year, so I'm not feeling terrible about it. But yeah, definitely a thought I had Also, we were texting. I was texting you last night about an idea that kind of might fall into a realm of an Unfound Door, maybe a part 2, because I've already done The Shining. But I had texted you and asked, have you watched the series, the 1997? I think I usually call it the Stephen King's The Shining.
Yeah.
Versus Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, and you haven't.
Never watched an episode.
I watched it back in 97 when it came out. I don't remember much of it. But so I said, it'd be interesting is if we were to read the book, watch the Kubrick film, and then watch that series, and then have an episode and kind of just go through it and just have a big, Shining,
Unfound Door.
Yeah, I mean, like I've already done one technically, but you would be involved at this point. Plus, we'll also be then distilling like King's novel versus Kubrick's film versus the
novel,
the miniseries.
The miniseries, yeah.
And because I think the miniseries, it was funny. I actually so one of the things that sparked me on that was I saw an interview with Flanagan about
Mike.
Dr. Sleep,
Yeah.
and he said that he actually had some slight references to that miniseries in Dr. Sleep as well.
Oh.
So nothing like major, but like there were some like shot compositions and stuff that were kind of tributes to the way that miniseries was done on some spots. So it was kind of cool because he's like I really enjoy it. He said something about he had seen it 6 to 10 times, some like that in the interview. He said he's watched it a number of times in his life, and he really does appreciate it. But it is kind of the forgotten child, The Shining thing. And I was like, you know what, that is true. And then like the second I read that, I text you. I'm like, hey, have you ever seen it?
Yeah.
And so I think we might do that next year as kind of an Unfound Door.
Definitely going to be one of our Unfound Doors. Like we can pencil it in now for next year. Maybe not the first one. Maybe it'll be the second one. We don't know. Like Chad said, we're going to do at least 2.
Yeah.
Every year.
Yeah.
It may end up being more depending on what we,
how
what
things
we
go.
want to do, how things go. We are still going to be doing book clubs and everything like that. So,
one thing I wanted to throw out too is what if we, between you and I, came up with like a, maybe each of us brought top 10 and then kind of talked them through and whittled it down to like 4 or 5 and then threw it out for the listeners to vote on what
they want to hear,
what we cover.
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought about that might be kind of fun too. But yeah, so that's kind of a couple things I wanted to mention. And again, spring on you, which I guess inadvertently we actually did 2 this year. I didn't even think about it because I actually had forgotten about the stand one a tiny bit. So I was thinking like this is the first one we've done since whatever. But then I remember the and ultimately Castle Rock. You're right. We called that a round table, but probably that
what it was
that was probably identified. It was probably would have been more of an Unfound Door, but so that's some of the announcements and stuff, and then we'll let me finish the rest of the intro stuff here. If you want to subscribe to us and rate and review us, you can do that on Apple Podcasts. You can stream us on Stitcher. You can find us on pretty much any podcast services. If you want to find anything about the show in terms of the stuff we talk about, the show notes will be at darktowerpalaver.com. This episode though won't really have any show notes because we're just talking about the Institute. So, like, if you want to find anything out about it, I suppose go and buy the book, from Audible, Amazon, whoever, local bookstore, and read it, because that's about all that we're going to be talking about in this. But normally, darktowerpalaver.com, if you're a new listener, you can go on there. We have a little spot for you to click for new questions questions we ask new listeners.
Survey.
To if you want to, like, email in. It's kind of some things to prime the pumps and things that we've kind of it's kind of funny because I look at those questions, we pretty much developed those all within the first 6 months or so, because like as people started emailing in, we're like, hey, here's some things we want to hear from everyone, and then like we've kind of held to them. Like those are
it was really kind of interesting because it would be like 3 emails in a row would all have my favorite book is this and my favorite character is this, and it's like actually a pretty good question to gauge, like.
I think we came. I think originally our first episode, I would guess we probably had similar questions that we each answered. So yeah, it's just kind of one of those things that every time I look at those questions, I'm like, I haven't really revised those much. Those are pretty much the same questions we've had for 4 years. But they're cool things for new listeners. Use those. And they can help you prime the pump for your emails. But email whatever you want. You don't have to follow those questions. You can follow, grab some of them and not others. Like, do whatever you want on your emails. We're not like legalistic about you have to do those, but I think they're fun and they help people kind of, I don't know, maybe figure out what to email. Because that's me sometimes. There's times where like something will open up like an email. So I'm just like, I don't know what the fuck to say. So I just don't say anything. And then last up, if you are new to the show, you've joined our extended quartet, and as such, there are a number of ways you can be involved in this quartet, and Peter can tell you about those.
Like Ted already said, email is the biggest one. It's darktowerpalaver@gmail.com. We also have a Facebook page. It's facebook.com/Dark Tower Palaver. And you can follow us on the Twitter. It's at Dark Tower Pod. That's at Dark Tower POD. And then we stream all of our shows live. It's youtube.com/Dark Tower Palaver. We mentioned our book clubs earlier. We do stream those live. They don't stay up, so you can check those out on the regular podcast service. The other thing also...
This one will probably stay live, though, because we don't really have sound clips. We don't have any
sound clips because it is an Unfound door. It's more like a round table, kind of like the Castle Rock one.
Yeah.
We'll stay up. So for YouTube, make sure to go in and hit the like button and then subscribe. Make sure to turn on your phone settings so that you can get notified whenever we go live.
Absolutely. Sounds like Cody says he hasn't finished the Institute yet. So Cody, you may have said it before you popped in, but we're gonna kind of be not super linear. So I don't know if you want to listen. It's up to you, but ultimately we're probably gonna spoil stuff, and we're probably not gonna necessarily go in order. Unfortunately, the way our conversation style goes, we're usually not very linear with our conversating. And then Mark also mentioned that he really liked the miniseries The Shining. And you know what? The thing is for me is I was 97. I don't remember what part of the year that came out, but I was either 11 or 12 and when that came out. And I don't remember overly loving it, but honestly, I was such a fan of the movie, because that was my original experience with it, is the movie. I didn't read, I was even before I would have read the book, because I was only 12. I think I was around 14 or so that I tried to read the book the first time. I ultimately don't remember. I think honestly, so it just came into for me not having experienced the book, knowing Kubrick's film and then seeing that, I don't think I was overly impressed. Yeah. But it's because I had no experience with the book. Now that I've actually read the book, I'm actually excited to jump back in and watch it again, because honestly, it might be a whole different experience for me. I mean, it's actually the same guy that did the Stand miniseries, and it is that. I mean, it's a little bit later. It's a couple year jump from that, but ultimately it still does have that 90s style and still is made for TV and stuff. But it is one that I would like to give a watch and talk about. That'd be fun. And then Alan also in the chat. So let's go ahead and hit the calendar real quick. I want to keep hitting this so that everyone's kind of keen on what we're doing. So this is obviously November 9th, Unfound Door. The Institute. And then next episode we'll have Roundtable 81, which will be a normal roundtable. Probably might be on a little bit on the longer side, just because we've now gone a little. It's just like a book club with this episode, so there's maybe some news that we haven't talked about that we'll have to catch up on. But also we're going to tag at the end Dr. Sleep discussion like we did with it. So what we're going to generally do with movies, I think that's a good general thing to do, is to just kind of tag it along at the end of the episode to kind of have a spot where it's like, hey, if you haven't seen the movie yet, don't listen any further, watch the movie, then come back to it type thing. Yeah,
but we want to make sure, like we talked about earlier, so we're going to make sure that we put it out a couple weeks before. Give a wider audience a chance to go see it and everything like that, which for us, I mean, obviously we've already seen Dr. Sleep, but again, we're going to wait till the 23rd, 22nd? 23rd before we talk about it.
So I'd say in general, a rule of thumb for movies will be not the closest episode to the movie release, but the next one, which is going to give you 3-ish, maybe 3 weeks to a month, depending on where you're at. Because chances are, I mean, if the movie came out in the mid, I guess, if we do not the episode after the movie is released, but the next episode, it's pretty much going to give you a month to get out to the cinema and watch the film before we talk about it. And then December 7th is the call-in show. Go ahead and add us on Skype, which is Dark Tower Palaver, just spelled out with no spacing. And that is the way we'll be doing our call-ins. And then the 21st of December is our roundtable number 82, which is where we'll close out the year. Do you remember which one we talked about? I guess it would be the 21st, where we talked about doing the checklist.
Yeah.
Okay. I actually just built that out for a blank for people too, so I'll have that shared on social media here about the time this episode gets posted,
and on the show notes.
Well, there's not really show notes for
Oh,
this
okay.
episode, so I guess I could post on the website still. Just it won't necessarily be in the show notes fashion. But basically, I'll create it to a thing where you can go in there. You won't be able to edit that version, but if you could just copy it, it's just gonna be on Google Sheets. Hopefully, you're using that, or if not, you could just copy and paste it into another spreadsheet. But ultimately, it'll just be that where you can copy it, have your own copy, and I kind of have it built, and we'll kind of go through it when we have that episode. But it'll just be a checklist you can go through and check off which of the King books you have and haven't read, and it'll give you a percentage of your overall. It'll give you your total, and yeah, we'll compare all those notes at the end of the year.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting show because Tad is a firm believer that I have surpassed him.
Yes,
and read more than he has.
Yes, I do believe so. Yeah, so that is that. That'll close us out for the year on the 21st, which is getting pretty close to Christmas. And then we will find out in that time after that episode, me and Peter will work out our scheduling for the following year. Generally speaking, we always end up finding that if we put it on 1 week versus another, it'll miss all of our major things like holidays and stuff. So
Yeah.
we just got to figure out when that is, and we'll have a date for when we're going to be back, and we'll have that shot out on social media. And then also we might have some variants on our, not necessarily, we're hoping not the dates, but potentially the times. So you want to?
Yeah, so I recently left my place of employment, and I'm starting a new job on Monday, which has different scheduling. I think that, as far as I understand it, I may have to work certain Saturdays. So it's morning shifts, so it just may bump the podcast back is what we're hoping. We're still finding out details. I'll find out, like I said, my first day is Monday. We'll get into it a little bit more on the 23rd when I have all the details.
Yeah. But we just want to at least throw it out there that theoretically there might be some shifting. We're hoping that, we're hoping there's no change, which is possible. Or second best case scenario is that maybe it'll just be a time shift and we have to just go a couple hours later than normal. Worst case scenario, we might have to change dates, which hopefully isn't the case, but we'll see what happens. But yeah. As of right now, this is our tentative dates through the rest of the year. So.
Yep.
That is that. So let's go ahead and pop on over to our. Here's the title slide I created here for the Institute. Had to find me some Unfound Door high speech scribage. I just felt it's Unfound, not Unfound Door, obviously. But yeah, Institute. What do you think of the cover of this one? Because we saw it originally when it was announced by EW, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know what I really thought of it. I mean, the train, I guess whatever, but now having read it, what do you think of the cover?
It really kind of threw me off. I don't know where my notion came in, because we talked about it when they released the cover, and then we read like the synopsis that came with it is that, a kidnapped boy. I honestly thought that the kidnapped boy was going to be on a train, and then like getting into the Institute, it's like, wait, this isn't on a train? Like, what's going on here? So I don't know. It's just one of those things that, like, off of the book cover and off of what we initially talked about, I just thought that the Institute was going to be actually on a moving train to keep them,
Yeah.
There's no way you can find them if they're on a moving train. I was like, oh, that's actually pretty smart and everything like that. But, it's a little bit different because of that. He obviously uses a train.
Yeah.
And that's the reason for the cover. But it's just interesting that it's not something different.
Yeah.
Kind of gives the impression that his room's in the train, which is where I got my misconception of it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And then Mark is asking in the chat, what time are we on? We're on Mountain Time. What's actually funny is I just happened to stumble on earlier this week. Apparently the universal time that people use is called Zulu time, which is based on Greenwich Median Time, because there's no time shift for what's the bullshit we just went through? What do you call it? Daylight savings. Hate that thing, but there's no daylight savings on that time zone and stuff, so they basically just use that as kind of the universal standard that anyone can calculate off that. I never knew about that. If I would have known about that shit, I would have been saying that since fucking we started with our times, because we keep saying because in the United States we've been using the Eastern time zone, because I think most things, like if you watch TV and stuff, they always talk about Eastern
7 p.m. Eastern,
which then like here in Utah we just know subtract 2 hours off and you got the time. But no, Zulu time, we're now, it's actually 10:17 p.m. So we would generally stream at 10 Zulu time.
Yeah.
So yeah, if we had to move it back, that'd be closer to midnight. Which I think Mark, I don't know how close that is. I mean, I know that's close to you, time zone wise, I believe. But I'm not sure exactly. I don't know how the time zone, like how many time zones are in the UK. That's not something I
don't know.
I have no idea. But yeah, so
if that was my $1 million question, I'd probably have to use a phone a friend or something.
yeah. But yeah, so that's kind of where we're at now is 10. Obviously, I mean, because you're here, but but that's ultimately in the future we'll start tagging the Zulu time along with our normal our time, and then maybe that's easier for some people to calculate internationally. But yeah, so we don't know. We'll definitely see, and if in terms of timing, but yeah. So yeah, that's the cover. I don't know. I wasn't super like I don't know. I don't know if I was super into it when I first saw it. And then now, like, I guess I maybe appreciate it a little bit more. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I can't say a lot because honestly, there's a lot of Stephen King books that I love that the covers don't do a lot for me.
Yeah.
I think it's just a matter of like, how do you do artwork? Like I think for instance, there's the Honest Trailers just did The Shining recently, and they showed one of the original, if not the original cover for The Shining, which has like cartoonized, drawn people for like Jack and Danny and stuff and Wendy, and it just seems strange. And I guess this is kind of the same way. Like you're ultimately fictionalizing in an animation like a child and stuff. So I don't know. I don't know. I don't judge a book by its cover, but ultimately I can't say. I'll say I like it more now having read the book, but going into it I wasn't super like whatever. And yeah, the train, none of it even processed for me. Like in terms of, like, I get it. Yeah, there's a train there, but like you're saying, like you were made an assumption on that.
Just
like that never even entered my mind. I was just like, oh, cool. Like train, sky, kid, box. Like it just, and I just moved on. So that's me.
Cody left. Like,
okay.
He looks like he took off.
Yeah, because he said he hadn't finished it yet.
And then Mark says 10:20 p.m. right here. Midnight may be better for me. Sometimes I miss the start of the show because I'm all baby duties.
Oh, okay. So, I mean, ultimately, if we end up having to shift it, then maybe that would be better for you. Yeah, I guess I just assumed, later would be worse.
Hey,
in
some people
cases,
are night owls like you.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So, yeah, I guess if we start saying Zulu time, that will be your time. So that'd be convenient for you. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know how I can't remember how I discovered that.
Oh,
but
really?
It's just like randomly just falling down rabbit holes of the internet, and suddenly I saw something Zulu time mentioned. I'm like, what the hell is Zulu time?
Apparently,
it's like universal standard. It's used by the military. It's used by a
businesses.
A lot of different places because since they don't have daylight savings, and then I don't know why. I mean, that's the big thing.
It's zero.
Yeah.
So if you look at the time zone map, you'll see like +1, -1, +2, -2, going from zero. So for everyone to be able to situate off of a focal point without having to be like, okay, so I'm doing business with someone who's in Tokyo and I'm in San Francisco. Okay, well that's California. I'm -7 and he's +4.
Yeah.
So that's 11 hours different.
See me, I just trust Skynet and go, hey, Skynet.
What time is it in Tokyo?
That's me. I mean, of course, Skynet being Google, of course.
Well, and also you have to remember is that, this was probably designed before the computers.
Yeah.
Time zones is something,
time zones, yeah.
That's what I mean.
But using Zulu time as like a standard was.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. It's like, I
don't know how long that's been.
When you think about it, like the New York Stock Exchange didn't take over as the top one until right before the Great Depression, World War I, wasn't it? And so before that, you had like Berlin, and you still have the Tokyo and everything like that. So you have this international business. You have to have ways to figure that out. And there was no, hey Google, what time is it in Japan? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that's where it was developed, as far as I understand it. I have not looked this up. I am not that much into Zulu time. I honestly didn't even know it was called Zulu time. We used it at my previous job because it was international business and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it was Universal Time Code is what it was called, UTC.
Oh,
so
okay.
It would be really confusing because sometimes I'd be like, yes, the money went through at 3:40 a.m. And they're like, what? I'm like, that's 3:40 a.m. English time. So that went through at 10 o'clock last night. Oh, so it's like, it was really weird.
Yeah. So that's interesting little tidbit I learned that we could actually use for the show. So jumping into the Institutes, just some of the basic details, because this is, I mean, some of these seem silly now because it's so new, but we've done that. We did this on the stand. I don't remember if we did it on previous ones, but I guess we'll kind of use it as a kind of a template. And saying release date obviously is new. But release date for this one was September 10th, 2019. I guess if you're listening in the future, you may not know that. But so we're not too far removed from it. Just under 2 months, barely. Maybe even by the time we post the episode.
It'll be.
But tomorrow is 2 months.
Tomorrow is 2 months.
Yeah. So 2 months ago, page count 576. Setting modern time setting. And then the main places I tagged for it: Florida, South Carolina, Minnesota, and Maine. Those are like where the main chunks. I mean, there's some other places involved, but maybe not as important, or a little bit smaller in their breadth. So yeah, of course, Maine entering. Of course,
Go figure.
Yeah, honestly, I'm more shocked when he doesn't use Maine personally.
Yeah,
like in general. Like in fact, this one starts in Florida.
Yep,
and then moves on to Minnesota, and like it takes you a bit before you get to Maine. So it's just like
as soon as you get there, you're like, oh, there it is.
Yeah, King's not doing Maine, and then you end up in Maine. You're okay, there we are.
There it is.
Yeah. Maine is one of the more common characters in the Stephen King universe.
Yeah. I think we had someone in an email either last time or the time before that was like, God, I wish King would write a novel in my area. And he's like in Portland, Oregon or something. And I'm like, yeah, I know. It would be fun to have King set something up in Utah.
I mean,
us.
Yeah, the stand, they moved through Utah.
Through Utah.
And in the series, they actually filmed it here in Utah.
That's true.
Like they've changed that interchange now, so it doesn't look as whatever. But growing up and going off that interchange a lot, like I was, oh my God, I know that place. And now it's like I need to watch it again to see like, can I still recognize it? Because now I've been over that interchange a number of times since it's been rebuilt. It's over on like where 201 curves around the mountain.
Right around the mountain going out out past the Great Salt Lake.
Yeah. So they filmed a bit with the four of them walking right there. So yeah, I mean, you got that. You've got Campion comes through Salt Lake City on his drive. He mentions we've been sick. I've been sick since Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
Or something. It was maybe something I ate there or something. Because then we were just like, oh fuck.
Well, we'd be fucked.
Yeah, we're screwed. But yeah, it's just certainly not anything that we've had a lot of coverage. Actually, there's a Utah location in this book, as a matter of fact.
There's a character from Utah.
from Orem,
which is freaking awesome.
Yeah, not even a big place, but Orem. I mean, Utah,
and it is a main character. It's not just a passing character. It is a main character.
Yeah, I think a lot of people just think, oh, there's Utah, there's Salt Lake City, and that's it.
That's it.
So for us here in Utah, it's like and Stranger Things had Provo.
Yeah,
I think the new season of Stranger Things. So every once in a while, something will pop up and it'll be not Salt Lake City, and it's kind of like, oh, cool. Like
it was to go along those lines. My wife and I always freak out my wife especially, always freak out whenever something Utah is mentioned, and so I always tag those sections of like books with Stephen King. Like the Stand, when I reread it after we got married, I was like, oh yeah, I forgot that they mentioned Salt Lake City, and I showed her, and then like Stranger Things, I showed her that scene. I forgot to show her this one because my first time reading through, I was driving when I heard it.
Yeah.
And then the second time reading it through, I was doing laundry because down at the laundromat in my apartment complex. So she wasn't there, so I was like, I could. Nah.
Yeah.
Nah. So
yeah.
But it's really funny because they mention a town, and I was really impressed that the guy pronounced it right because I've heard that pronounced wrong.
Oh. Certainly not the worst city in Utah. There's some weird ones that, if I was an author and I knew there's going to be an audiobook, I'd throw those towns in just to see what the person did with it,
Yeah, no. So, the character is from Orem, Utah, which is about 40 minutes away?
Yeah, about 40 minutes south of us here in the Salt Lake Valley. And that's the thing with us is like neither of us are in Salt Lake, but, if you tell anybody where you're at,
we're in the Salt Lake Valley.
Yeah, I'm in Salt Lake City. Like, it's easier just to say that than like, oh, I'm in this place. And they're like, wait, where's that? Oh, it's like 20 minutes south Salt. And then, they just give you like a blank stare. It's like, no, I'm in Salt Lake City, whatever.
It's like those towns around L.A. I'm from L.A.
Yeah. It's just, pretty much L.A. is like a huge area for people. Cause like, nobody knows what like some of these places are. Maybe a little bit less so in California because their movies and stuff. I think people have kind of gotten used to like some areas outside of LA,
but still, it would be the same as if someone walked up to me and was like, "Oh, you're from Utah? What part? Are you from Salt Lake?" No, I'm from West Valley City. What?
It's on the east side of the valley.
It's on the east. It's I can see Salt Lake. It's right over there. That's the best part. Is it's on the east side of the valley.
That's why I should never be allowed to like name things because like West Valley, if it was me, it'd be on the east side of the valley. Like
you are a terrible person like that. Hashtag Ted is terrible.
Not terrible. It would just be trolling in a good way.
That's terrible. No, not really. You've done worse.
Okay, so it's interesting you mentioned that. So I had kind of a breakdown of the characters, and I just kind of had them for my benefit, but I was interested because I broke it up as leads, kids, staff, and Dupre. Really kind of how I broke it up. Now, leads, what would you say?
Luke.
Okay. Is he the only one you put down?
I mean, he is the lead.
Yeah, but like leads though, there's time you got more. I mean, like the Stand, like there's a lot of leads in that.
Right, but each one of them is part of the story. Luke's like it's not just Luke, it's not just Larry or Glenn or Ralph that goes to Vegas. There's 4 of them.
Yeah,
5 if you count Kojak. That go to Vegas. But this whole story is what Luke does, what happens to Luke.
Yeah,
everything revolves around Luke. So it's
not everything.
It's not.
But
no, it is. I mean, look at everything in this book. Everything is centralized around Luke and what he does and causes and what affects him.
So I put down Luke is obvious, but I also put Tim and Avery are the 3 that I put down for leads.
Again,
because I feel like those are the most important characters and probably carry a majority of the story. Are those 3 characters?
But again, we wouldn't have Tim if it wasn't for Luke.
Well, we get him before we get Luke, and it's unrelated to him completely.
But we get him set up where Luke gets off the train.
But we don't know that until
no, we don't. But
far into the book.
If Luke doesn't get off into prey, we never have Tim, and Tim wouldn't be the start of the book. Yeah. So it's all tied. It's all tied back to Luke.
Yeah, but I think it's certainly multi-lead, which I think multi-lead is normal. I don't think that generally you have just one lead. Maybe in a movie because you're way more streamlined with the movie because you've only got 2 hours to tell a story. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I would say those are the 3 I'd put in as leads. Everyone else I think are probably more supporting characters, because there's a whole section now then that you're following just because of Avery, and then ultimately you'd have a large swath with just him, like it has nothing to do with,
I thought, okay, so right off the bat, we're bringing up one of the main things that I wanted to talk about with this is that King broke from his norm. In going, okay, the Stand is a perfect example. So since we've done a Stand Unfound Door, I'm going to use it a lot as a kind of a reference point because it is one of the most widely known King books, and it is widely regarded as one of his best.
Yeah.
We do not get a linear story. We'll jump back with people. We'll jump forward with people.
Yeah.
But the big thing is that we jump. We don't get that a ton in this book. This is one of those rare King books. The only other one that I can think of off of the top of my head that is kind of like this is The Long Walk, which of course you haven't read, is that King sticks with one character for a very long time.
Yeah.
I mean, I was really honestly kind of surprised getting through the Institute, hitting the halfway mark, hitting the 3/4 mark, and I haven't seen Tim again.
Yeah.
It was really jarring to me to have that. Not in a bad way.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, it was kind of like every time I came to the end of a chapter, I'm like, okay, this is where we got to go back to Tim. This is a perfect cliffhanger spot. He just got on the boat. I'm going to go back to Tim now.
Yeah.
Nope.
Back with Luke. It kind of reminds me of Honey Bunny and what's his name in Pulp Fiction.
Oh, yeah.
You get them at the very beginning of the movie, and then you don't see him again until the very end.
Yep.
It's like, I don't know his name. He calls her Honey Bunny like 15 times, so I remember her name. But the 2 that are robbing the diner, and then it all kind of ties together and stuff. But it's like ultimately other characters in the Pulp Fiction pop in and out fairly regularly in the middle, you know what I mean? And it kind of all ties together. But like that one, it's like, oh, it was just a random thing at the beginning, and it doesn't make any sense. Then the very end, like literally the last scene of the movie, is like, oh, shit, here's where it all.
Oh, that's where it all ties.
Yeah, it does. These guys do come back.
I really thought it was interesting based off of like King's other works that I've read. I mean, even like Gerald's Game, which is literally like one character.
Yeah.
I mean,
for obvious reasons.
There's technically like 2 other characters that are actually in the place where the story takes place, not in the flashbacks or in the dreams or the hallucinations.
Yeah.
But there is one main character, but there is still jumps because she jumps back and remembers something and stuff like that. That really doesn't happen that much in the Institute.
Yeah.
It's not a ton of, Luke remembered what happened last week with the guards and everything like that. He kept it pretty real time.
Yeah.
Which I thought was actually pretty refreshing to have because it kept me on my toes.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And then Mark in the chat saying Ringo. Yeah, that does sound right. It has been a minute since I watched it, but and it's Tim Roth is the actor that plays that role. But yeah, no, I see what you're saying. And actually, as we get later on a little bit into the question section, I actually have a question that relates to that. I guess it's a matter of whether you want to just talk about it now. But
yeah, throw it out there. I mean, like we're on the subject, so let's do it.
Let me find it here. Yeah. Did you forget about Tim? Once because like ultimately we start with him, and then you don't see him again for a long while. Is there any point that you forgot about him? Because I did see some people mentioning online and stuff like in different places that were talking about the book said they had completely forgot about him by the time it.
I eventually got there to where I stopped expecting Tim.
Yeah.
And part of me, right around the time that I decided to stop thinking that, okay, this chapter I'm going to jump back to Tim, part of me is like, okay, this is where King's going to spring it on us. He just went an extra long time.
Yeah.
And now he's going to spring it on us. Like I said, I referenced the boat.
Yeah.
I mean, I got to Luke's escape, and that's where I was just like, all right, I'm obviously not going to go back to Tim. There's no way that King's going to take me away from this.
Yeah.
Unless he does, and he's a bastard.
Yeah.
So that's where, for me, it was just kind of like, I kind of wrote it off at that point.
Yeah.
And then just focused on Luke and everything. No, it wasn't his actual escape. It's when he decided to escape. And I'm like, okay, if I get into the escape, there's no way he cuts away and goes back to Tim.
Yeah.
There's no way.
Yeah.
He may do it now with the build up to the escape, and then we'll go back to Tim and we'll see more of him. And then, that's the build up for the escape, make it more suspenseful, more tension. But as soon as I got like one chapter in that he's actually going through with the escape and the escape started happening,
yeah,
I put Tim in the back of my mind and completely forgot about him and focused on what was happening with Luke. So
okay,
that's what happened with me. What about you?
No, I didn't, because it kind of reminded me of book 4, me reading book 4. Like I just kept expecting like it to kind of be a parallel story, Godfather 2-ish, and I expected it to kind of be like Roland tells a story night by night, but there's going to be things that break it up a little bit and show us the Quartet moving down the interstate or whatever. So there was just constant, and that's part of the reason that the first time reading through I was so pissed off by the book, because it never came. Like every once in a great while, like I believe at one point King probably thought to himself like, wait, shit, Roland's telling the story and I'm telling it from a perspective that it isn't just Roland's perspective. Like I'm not saying that King stumbles into shit like that, but there is part of me that because it does come to them, and they like stand up and they stretch out, how long's it been,
they go take a
and
leak.
then it's like, hey, how did you know about all this things? Like, oh, we'll get to it and stuff. I'm guessing King maybe had it planned out, but like there's just always part of me that just thinks like, oh shit, like but those little things that tease you. Besides that though, it just goes straight through. So I was kind of the same way though with this. I just kept expecting like I'm gonna see more from him. The other thing, I guess it's a similar and related question, is when you're reading Tim's section at the beginning, you kind of know the synopsis of this because, again, we talked about it on the show. So you kind of knew what this is going to be about. How did you think he was going to fit in to the story? Did you have any kind of like predictions as you were reading like his journey, his airport, moving to pray, hitchhiking? Like there's a whole bunch of stuff goes on with him. What was your thought process? Like, how was he? Because you knew he was going to fit in some way. King isn't just going to throw away, I don't know, maybe a third, or no, not a third, but maybe a quarter of the book into a character that will never come back. He's going to come back. So did you anticipate him in what way, I guess? Did you anticipate him in the story?
One of the things that I had early on when Luke gets to the Institute and we start hearing about it, and I can't remember which guard it was, but one of the guards like thinks to herself that, I didn't put up with 2 tours in the sandbox for this to come back to this kind of shit or something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe she says that. I think she says it was one of the mean ones. I thought that Tim's contract in New York private work
Yeah.
was going to be
Yeah.
the Institute.
I fully, that's exactly me too. I thought 100% that he was going to end up being a guard at the Institute, and like that this job that his friend was setting up with, that he'd end up being the new guard, and maybe we would kind of see he and Luke inserted into the Institute at the same time. It was kind of my
see
thought
it from
process.
the guard's perspective, see it from the kid's perspective.
Yeah.
I thought that the shootout, the robbery of the gas station was going to be his undoing into Prey and force him to leave and head to New York again.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking, and then we cut to Luke and we stay there.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm like, oh, okay. But then as soon as Luke got on the run, pretty quickly, he's going to end up in South Carolina. Like, that's where he's going to end up.
And in fact, I missed it, but in the first portion of the book, there's a reference to it when they're in Dupree. It says something along the lines of "until the boy showed up in Dupree" or something like that. There's a line like that in that early part. Again, one of those King things where he just kind of teases you with something where it's like, oh, okay, like so within the first 30 pages probably, like you have it basically revealed that okay, Luke's going to escape and he's going to end up in this town. Like, but I completely blew by that the first time. I did not I didn't even fucking catch that like at all.
And that's what King does.
And the thing is, I knew there would be a boy. Like we knew the synopsis, so it's like I know there's going to be a kid that's going to be the center of this. I kind of know that not anywhere near the whole story of the Institute, but I knew there was going to be an institute that's going to have this kid as a prisoner and stuff. So it's like that should have stuck out to me where it's like, okay, cool. You just kind of quote unquote, some people would call it spoiled, but you kind of just tipped your hand a little bit. But dude, it completely fucking Houdini'd past me, dude. I didn't even catch it. The second time I was shocked. I was like, wait, did that just fucking say that? I rewound it on my thing to make sure I heard that right. And it did. I'm like, what the fuck? How did I miss that?
Yeah.
So
and it happens all the time with King. King does it all the time to us. I think it's I might be remembering this wrong, but I'm pretty sure that he does it with the kid in The Stand. But he takes so long for the payoff that it does get buried.
Yeah.
Even if you remember it, it still gets buried because like I think the kid, it's like Trash Can Man arrives in Vegas, Cibola. You know, my life for you. And he's swimming in the fountain and he's about to collapse in the poker table, the blackjack table, whatever. And he's like, at least I didn't have a bad ending as the kid, you know, up on the mountain, you know, and stuck in that van or something like that. And you're like, what the fuck? And then it jumps back and we get introduced to the kid.
Yeah.
But instantly the kid takes over everything that you're thinking about.
Yeah.
Don't tell me, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing here. They mentioned it that, you know, Tim's living a life and that, you know, he's until the boy lands in his lap. But then we instantly transition to Luke, and all I care about is this kid who's 12 years old, who's graduating and ready to go to college. He's going to go to MIT and the University of Boston.
Something. I can't remember the other one.
I remember MIT is the big one.
Yeah.
And then he's going to go to 2 universities at once.
At 12.
At 12, have his parents move across the country with him. The alumni are going to find that just blew that he's going to end up with Tim at some point in this novel from my mind.
Yeah.
King just has this way of, it's like a word shotgun.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, oh, you're thinking about that? Which, now you're not.
Master storyteller, right?
For sure.
To be able to kind of sleight of hand it a little bit. But yeah, for me, sometimes I'll connect to something and just not let go. Again, I kept expecting modern stuff in book 4. And same with this. I just kept expecting, like, where's Tim? Where's Tim? Where's Tim? Like, and it just never left my mind. Like, yes, I got invested in the rest of the story.
Oh, really?
I certainly did. But there was still just part of me where I'm just like, okay, what's going on with Tim? Like, is he going to, you know, I kind of gave up the fact that he was going to show up. That was a thought I had early on. But as we moved into the Luke story, I didn't really think that Tim was going to show up necessarily. So, yeah, but that was kind of my process there. So that was the leads. Let's see. Then I also had the kids, the staff, and the Dupree. So I guess we can jump, because we don't need to go through the list of characters. I have the list here if we need to reference it. I don't have everyone, but I do have a decent list. So connections to other works. What were any that jumped out at you?
The only one that I really thought was, obviously, I mean, the reference to Jerusalem's Lot was a huge one.
Yeah.
A dead town.
Yeah.
Up in Maine.
Through Orphan Annie.
Orphan Annie.
Yeah. So she brings up, because she's listening to the real show is Coast to Coast, and it's had multiple hosts now.
Mm-hmm.
When I listened to it, because I loved listening to it, because it was fucking the most entertaining thing ever in the middle of the night, because it was always on at midnight to like 3 a.m. and like,
Oh, really?
you know, so I would like, it's on AM radio and shit. But I'd listen to it because it was like, it was great. Like it was just,
It was entertaining.
it always was, yeah. But I always listened to it was George Norrie was the host. They invent someone here. I know there was one previous to that like, because I talked to my dad about it where I'm like, dude, this is hilarious. Oh yeah, he's like, I used to listen to that when I was younger, and he's like, and
Oh,
he
really?
lists the guy's name. I'm like, no, that's not who I, you know, whatever. And I think it's even a different person now. But so she listened to a show like that, which is just like everything you could imagine. What I used to love about the show was like through an episode is listening to like, because the host will always agree with everyone, no matter what they're calling it about. Like, yes, I believe that, you know, even though through the course of that same episode, you might have ones that are saying things that contradict a previous person.
Oh, really?
This dude still just accepted everything that everyone said. And I don't think that he really probably accepted it. You know, accepts it. You know, there may be aspect. He may be like a complete unbeliever, and he's just doing it all for the show. Who knows? But it was always funny where it's just like, oh yeah, well, you know, thing X, you know, is aliens, and then later on in the show, you know, he's like, oh yeah, that's great. Then later in the show, someone's like, oh, thing X, no, that's time travel, and then he's, oh yeah, that's great, that's of course, you know, I'm like, but it was just, I always found it funny, like tracking those things where it's just like, dude, like you can't believe them all. But yeah, so she listens to a show like that, and she talks about she's talking about government conspiracies and like men in the black vans and stuff. And this is, and then she mentions like, you know, ask someone from Jerusalem's Lot, you know, if you could find any, they're all gone. Like, you know, the government went in there and, you know, now there's no one left or whatever. So obviously, yeah, that's the big one. That's the biggest one. I have it taken down as well. The other one I mentioned, walk-ins are mentioned.
That's true.
You know, like
that
that's a big one for Dark Tower. You know, it mentions the walk-ins. I forget which character it was, but is it Callum? Who is it that finds them and helps them? He's like, "Are you a walk-in?" And then like he kind of explains to them like what walk-ins are. Yeah,
Cullum.
Yeah. So so walk-ins are mentioned a couple times. She mentions them. Usually it's her mentioning them actually. Again, in context of that show. So
one that I looked up because I wanted to see if there was supposed to be any kind of connection to it was the Shop, which is the organization that's hunting down Charlie and Firestarter. They are based in North Carolina, and they're looking for gifted individuals.
Okay.
Which would, with it being set in the 70s/80s, this could be a precursor to the Institute. It could potentially be it, but I don't believe it was, but I wanted to see what everyone else thought, so I looked it up just to see. I gauged it off of like internet responses, and also I did a deep dive into Reddit. Yeah. The books, the Stephen King, and everything like that. Subreddits. Majority of people don't believe that it is. Yeah. Because the way that I just spaced on the guy's name, even though I listened to it just a couple days ago. The Lisp guy at the end. Yeah, Bill Williams. Yeah. I have it listed. Yeah, Bill Smith. Bill Smith. That's right. I knew it was very generic, but I wanted to say John Smith because that's just what always pops into my head when it's ever a Smith. I was actually shocked that it wasn't. Like when you get Bill Smith, I'm like, Bill Smith? What about John Smith? Yeah, exactly. Like if you're going to use an alias, come on. Right next door to John Doe is John Smith. Yeah. Right? But he mentions that like this facility has been doing this for decades. Since World War II. Right. So that precursors then overrides the Shop. So that's where I didn't believe that it was the Shop, but it does have very shoppy vibes. Yeah. So for me, it's like, do I believe this is the Shop? Do I believe this is like an offshoot where maybe the government has the Shop and also the Institute? Okay. And that kind of thing. It's entirely possible, but for me, I would say no. Which is interesting because if I remember right, and I did get a chance to look this up, I meant to and I forgot, I'm pretty sure that we have concrete proof that Firestarter takes place in the same universe as Salem's Lot, Cujo, Needful Things, The Dead Zone, all those ones. Because all of those ones are tied together. Yeah. It is in there with them. So when you get reference to one, it actually brings you into that universe. Yeah. Like the Blob. Yeah, it just like mentioning Jerusalem's Lot actually makes it in the same universe. No, now here's the thing though. I would say, and that's actually my next point. Moving into the section I have labeled like my thoughts, and we'll get your thoughts and kind of whatever. Then I have some questions we can kind of go through. But on my thoughts, I said I think everything that King writes is on some level the Tower. Yeah. But just because something mentions something doesn't mean it's not on a separate level of the Tower.
You know, it doesn't mean it's on the same. Like, does that make sense? Like, because like think about like, okay, so Susanna goes to a different Eddie and Jake. You know, because
True.
it's a universe close enough, but it's far enough though. They end up being they're like brothers.
They are brothers,
and there's some differences. But I feel like there's like and I mean like the super flu, right? We see the super flu in a world that's not the Stand because it's got the Takuro spirits and Nozzla and the Monarchs. Are all those seen in the when they're so ultimately there's things like I think there are some things that spread like okay so like or not spread in a way of like the disease but like the super flu maybe on multiple levels unrelated to each other and in the same way that like do places are places in all of them so like is Salem's Lot is that a town in every single level of the tower so potentially I mean in this one it seems connected because it's talking about the town was completely gone. But is there maybe a level that Jerusalem's Lot's mentioned is just a fucking normal town that nothing's wrong with, you know what I mean? Like, is that a possibility in the realm of like the infinite nature of the tower? I guess that's a thought I had because like the one that came to mind for me is Dan, Torrance, Abra, Jake, for God's sake. I mean, there's a number of people that would be hunted by these people and would have been cataloged by these people. So there's part of me that's like, why aren't they involved? But it's like, because this is a different level of the tower where those people don't exist in that way.
True.
It would be my guess because ultimately that's my thought is like, okay, well, for hunted gifted people, this is all, it's all King. It's all in his universe. Okay, why didn't they hunt Dan? He's one of the strongest ever. You know, Abra is on the same level. Jake, probably not as much, but easily higher than some of the people that we saw in this book.
Roland says that he's very gifted in the touch.
Yeah, the touch.
So.
And that would be TP, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't not really so TP like TP pause as well. I think he's more active with it,
and that's what they want more is TP versus TK.
Yeah, so I would just say that like there's part of me it's like okay, well how does that fit? So I guess the way I do it in my head for like head canon would be is like there's different levels of the tower, and some of them are going to be the same in a lot of ways, but small differences. And in this case, Danny, Jake, Abra don't exist, so.
It would be a very interesting argument to have is does the True Knot exist in the
good point
in the level with the Institute because the True
wouldn't they be at odds
well the thing is that actually kind of coincides with making the True Knot a little bit more believable that they do exist in the same universe. There's a line in Dr. Sleep not only in the movie but also in the books where this is going into spoilers for Dr. Sleep. They talk about the True Knot, Crow Daddy and Rose the Hat are talking about how there's not as much steam.
Yeah.
Well, there's not as much steam because the Institute's bottlenecking it all.
Well, no, because even this, they talk about there's not as many as there used to be. That the place used to be filled with 50-something people. Now that they get so I honestly wonder if that's more of just like a decay-ish type thing, and that could even be tied to the tower, right?
Could be.
As the tower starts to
the beams start to break,
beams are breaking. Like there's going to be. I mean, the worlds are moving on, right? Ultimately, the worlds, I would say. So I guess the question, I'm not disagreeing because I'm the same way. I like to connect those dots and like the meme, like with this King stuff. But the only thing I would say is I'd venture a warning that we got to be careful about connecting things like just because of mentions, because there theoretically dairy exists in every level of the tower, but it may not be dairy like the evil infested dairy
like,
on all those levels.
Like Pet Sematary, the movie, the 2019 movie. We saw the sign that said dairy, and so my first initial reaction is, oh my God, there's dairy.
Yeah.
But then I got thinking about that. Okay, so if there's 2019 dairy, officially that doesn't exist.
Yeah, that wouldn't exist anymore.
Because in 1985, the town goes kaput.
Yeah. And this somewhat might be me kind of being somewhat cheeky and kind of just playing with it. But really, that's how I understand the King universe is like levels of the tower.
On this level, we have Cujo, Needful Things, and Dead Zone, which are all directly tied to each other.
Yeah.
Which also references...
And Pet Sematary, doesn't that mention, the book mentions the attack of the dog?
The attack of the dog.
So that,
Pet
you add
Sematary,
that in there too.
All of those ones are referenced in this level of the tower. Therefore, they are all connected. But in this level of the tower, moving one level down, there's only Cujo and Pet Sematary.
Yeah.
Because Pet Sematary exists in a world where the guy mentions that a St. Bernard went crazy, but there is no mention of a psychic man from the Dead Zone.
Yeah.
Or of an entire town going through a homicidal rage, like in Needful Things.
Yeah.
Or anything like that.
Yeah.
Just the dog. So
yeah.
I get where you're coming from.
It's it's ultimately a multiverse argument, right?
Honestly, it's a better way of explaining the King universe than trying to tie everything together. Because let's be perfectly honest, the Institute and the True Knot would not exist.
I don't think
the
they
True
could.
Knot would go in and wipe out the Institute.
Yeah.
And take the kids.
Yeah.
Because that's their food.
Yeah, that would be
a
buffet.
smorgasbord.
Yeah.
Buffet would be a great
Yeah.
way of looking at it. So I'm with you on this one. I wholeheartedly agree.
But ultimately, it's a multiverse,
Yeah,
that's the magic of a multiverse. Is like literally each universe can turn a new universe can be turned on the pin of one small difference. There might just be one universe that's exactly the same as another one, except that Jake doesn't exist in it. That could be the singular thing that defines one universe from another. So that's why it's multi, and that's why ultimately a multiverse, in my understanding of most people's explanation of it in pop culture, I'm not like talking about metaphysics here, but in pop culture, it's infinite. You know, there's infinite levels of the tower. There's infinite possibilities of worlds and universes. Some might cross, you know, but ultimately, yeah, it's complicated. But ultimately, that gives King the freedom too to write as he does because dude, he'd be insane if he was trying to actually balance all this into one actual world. Dude, he would go fucking insane. Because how do they, you know, like when you start to get into some of this nitty gritty shit.
How do you get the Institute at the shop coexisting?
Yeah.
How do you get the Institute and True Knot existing?
Yeah.
They can't.
And ultimately, beam breakers, right? Because beam breakers,
like
so those would be pulling from the same.
The Crimson Kingsmen coming into our world, like in Hearts of Atlantis, looking for people who are TP.
Yeah.
The True Knot are hunting down TP to try and eat them, the Shining.
Yeah.
And then you have the Institute who's trying to use them to prevent world disasters.
Yeah.
TP and TK into back half.
Yeah.
So you have those three competing for that. Let's not even throw in the shop that's looking for gifted individuals as a result of, scientific experiments with drugs.
Yeah.
Let's not even throw in, just the Shining in general.
Yeah. And
everything. Just the fact that people shine.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of interesting to look at it where you can draw conclusions and connections. We talked about when the Dark Tower movie came out that basically beam breakers were being made to look like Shine.
Yeah.
It was all in the head. It was all something that they could do, telepathic and everything like that. It's interesting to kind of pull yourself back. I mean, it was Chris from Australia that did it, right? Where it's like all the different stories that are connected to each other.
No, he shared that with us.
He shared it with us.
Yeah.
Though. Okay, so he didn't make it, but he shared it with us.
It's I can't remember her name.
Yeah.
Right. It was all the connections because we looked into it for the band.
Mr. Mercedes and Dr. Sleep,
the boy band
around here.
Yeah, and Chris sent it to us saying, it's on her.
That was
her infographic. Sorry, I'm forgetting her name, but yeah. So things like that. I don't know. That's and I'm trying to think of something. Carrie, for instance, how would Carrie get to high school, being what she is? You know what I mean? Like why? Like the Institute would have taken her.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, fuck, she's.
Yeah, you make it rain rocks. The Institute's going to be all up in your business at that point.
Yeah, and I don't think that they allow them to go as far as high school even. All of them are younger than that, aren't they?
No, they're a little bit older than Luke. Luke was an exception because he was going to make a big splash. Sigsbee talks about it.
No, I mean, Avery is the ultimate exception. He's only like 10 or less, right?
Right. But look at the other ones. They're a little bit older than Luke.
I figure they were more in the realm of like 14, 15, most of them.
Which is 15 is high school for most parts of the country. You got to remember, Utah's a little bit backwards. 9th grade is high school for most.
Yeah.
So that's where you got to consider that is that, you're looking at it from
I'm talking like Carrie's high school. She's 15.
Junior.
I'd say she's 16, closer to 16 or 17.
She is a junior. I just recently reread Carrie. She's a junior in high school. No, she's a senior in high school. So she's 17, 18.
Yeah, or the True Knot, right? Like there's just certain things where it's just like they don't make sense if they're all in one world.
Right.
So it ultimately has to be multi-worlds. Otherwise, these things kind of conflict with each other. And again, maybe it's kind of a cop-out in some people's minds, but ultimately, I just say, no, that's the beauty of a multiverse. Like there is no being tied down. Like it could ultimately be just the difference of Jake and, Eddie are brothers and... they're eventually going to find a dog, it's just, like that's the beauty of it is, and I'm trying to think what other multiverse things we have in Dark Tower. Isn't there some other people we get different versions of? Like Jake, I guess they see Jake in their dream.
Yeah.
They follow, but that may not be a different version of him, but.
No, they follow Eddie too.
Yeah.
Eddie and Henry. Jake follows Eddie. Is that the Eddie that actually ends up in the Dark Tower?
Yeah.
With them?
Yeah, because we talked about that. Because ultimately, it may not be. And just because you go to the manor and get spooked the same as the Eddie that is our Eddie doesn't mean that's still not the same person. Does that
maybe that Henry doesn't get fucked up in Vietnam, comes back perfectly fine, and him and Eddie
thick as thieves
grow up thick as thieves and have good lives together without being heroin junkies.
Yeah. And that's one of those things, like, you know, if you come to an intersection and go left, that's one multiverse. You go right, that's the other multiverse. Like, that's the way I view it. Like, literally every choice anyone makes.
The big thing with that, and it's bigger than that. That's the thing with the multiverse. Yes, you can take a right, and if you go left, that's a different set of multiverses. Because as soon as I turn left, then I have another option.
Yeah.
Go straight, turn right, or turn left.
No, absolutely.
There's more options than just left or right.
Yeah.
And that's the big thing to understand with the multiverse is, yes, there is going to be a level of the tower with the True Knot and the Shining and the Breakers and the Cantoi who are out hunting people like Father Callahan.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. Then there is going to be another level of the tower where there's the Institute, and another level of the tower that has the shop, and another level of the tower that has Gerald's game. And, you know, who knows? There may be a level, and if we're playing that game, there is going to be a level of the tower where the shop, the Institute, the True Knot, Derry with Pennywise,
all exist.
Crimson King, all of them exist in the same.
And I'd say the Crimson King exists everywhere, because isn't he a singular being that
he's outside of it because he's at the tower?
Yeah, so like him so I think like, and also Flag I think is kind of outside, because I feel like Flag, we see him move to different levels of the tower, you know. So I almost feel like with the beam breakers and stuff, like he could almost go, you know, past it, and it just makes me think that like ultimately he's not hard up at that point, you know, like with breakers, you know, like Thunderclap, but like maybe, you know, if things didn't end and thousands of years down the road and they get depleted there, you'd start to see like some of these universes like the Institute exists in, eventually Flag starts showing up to take these people to become breakers, you know.
Can I ask you a question real fast before we move away from this, because you mentioned it with the stand. Do you honestly believe that the level of the tower that they go to in book 4 isn't the stand?
Yeah, because they have like Takuro spirits. And
where does it say in the stand that they don't have Takuro spirits?
I don't know.
There's nowhere in the stand that disproves that they don't have Nozzle. They never talk about Coke. They never talk about the Kansas City Royals. They never talk about Takuro spirits.
Now, do they mention Coke? Though there's a few times they're at barbecues and stuff. I wonder what they mention for different things.
I personally, because I wanted to know if that was actually the stand or not. I think it is, because Flag mentions it in the Emerald City. Don't you like what I did with this world? So, again, it could be another stand world, but to me, just because there is no... It doesn't change the stand for me.
Yeah.
To have it be one with Takuro Spirit, Nozzle and everything like that.
For me, I like it being a different one because those differences, but also because, again, it also adds layers to the multiverse of like...
But there's more than one level of the stand.
Yeah, the Captain Trips happens on a number of levels, you know, so... because then it gives you that freedom to know that like mention of the superflu doesn't mean that you're now stuck in that world. Like it just means you're in one of the worlds that has that, I guess. So for me, I like that flexibility, but I mean, ultimately, yeah, it's ultimately headcanon. I next time I go through the stand, I'll certainly be more.
It's book 4 if you want to go back and check it out. I really think, if I remember right, and guys, correct me if I'm wrong here.
No, I mean the stand is next time I go through my stand read. What I'll do is I'll just like. Because, like, I'm trying to remember what was Takuro replacing. Because they said, was it Toyota? Okay. So it'd be a matter of, is Toyota mentioned, Coca-Cola, or...
The Kansas City Royals.
Yeah. See, in my head, I'm
just
thinking,
what? No, you know what? I just disproved myself. I can think of one.
When Larry talks about the Yankees, they're out of town on a road trip.
It's what's her name? Fran. In her diary, she mentions Nolan Ryan. And did he play for the Royals?
I'm not sure.
I don't remember who Nolan Ryan played for.
We're only about 6 months removed from me doing a reread on the stand, so I'll definitely go through it having that in mind, because ultimately you might be right, but I've never gone into a read of the stand necessarily looking for that, so I'm not sure. But yeah, so I view this as a different level,
because he was a Texas Ranger. That's okay.
So next up, I kind of just had like, I guess, our thoughts on it in general. Like, 'cause I have some questions I want to get dig into some things, but just overall thoughts. First, likes. What are some things you like? Like for me, I put down. It feels like it fits right into the King universe. Things like Dead Zone, Carrie, The Shining, It. Feels very closely related to this, which I think is awesome. And I almost feel like, in a way, if you really think about it, King has moved away from that in recent years.
Yeah.
And so I actually used an example. I said, if King were a band, maybe he had a bunch of hits that were a certain style, but over the last number of years, he's been doing kind of more experimental things. And not that they're bad, I think they're still good, but this is almost him going back and having like a throwback or back to basics album where he's just like, hey, let me go back and do things like I did 20 years ago versus like, because like the Hodges trilogy, I say, is as experimental for King as you get. Because there's some supernatural stuff in there, but it's a side dish.
If you read just Mr. Mercedes, there's
nothing.
There's absolutely nothing supernatural about it. It's not until you get into book 2 and book 3 that you get to the supernatural.
Yeah.
And then The Outsider ties into it as well.
Yeah.
So with that's where it makes it more Kingish per se.
Yeah. And so I like that. That this almost felt like kind of a throwback. It feels like something more in the realm of like King from the 70s or 80s versus King of the 2000s. Like it just. So I thought that was kind of cool. Because there is one element of like just living in like all of King's books, and at different times. Like it's just one of those like, oh yeah, this fits right in. But then when you really start to think about like, wait a minute, quantify what each of these books feel like, as time goes by. And I mean, let me just look here. So you got the Institute, then you have the Outsider, which is got some supernatural elements, but I feel like when we talk about the Outsider at some point, it's going to be interesting because I really feel like the Outsider is very different than most of King's stuff. He's actually taken, something way outside of his realm, and it's actually something that kind of really exists in mythology and using it versus creating his own thing. You know what I mean?
That's not new for King. I mean, go read Salem's Lot again.
No, but those are classic things. Like this one he's using here is like
it's a classic.
No,
go find every single culture has a story of some shape-shifting monster.
Different cultures. He doesn't play in different cultures very often. That's where the big change is for him.
No, he does though. I mean, he's tackled vampires. He's tackled werewolves,
which is your mainline stuff for.
And
like Western society
and shapeshifters. That's not new. That's not.
But it's not just that though. I don't want to get too far into it, but it's not just shapeshifters. It's connected to a very specific type of thing that's not Western culture as much as like Dracula or Wolfman or Frankenstein or whatever else. Or I think it's vastly different. I haven't done Sleeping Beauties, but then End of Watch, like you've got those are all different, obviously. Again, I feel like it's almost like he just spiced those with supernatural versus like letting supernatural be the main thing. Like it's the main thing for this, it's just a gumshoe detective novel. Finders Keepers Revival, I actually haven't read. I still need to read that one. Mr. Mercedes, Dr. Sleep, that's obviously a return in a way, but I feel like I like Dr. Sleep a lot because it wasn't super similar to The Shining. Like there was a lot of differences about it. So I mean that even get you back six years or so. So yeah, I mean he's been doing a lot of different things. Went through the Keyhole, 11/22/63 being a big one. And yeah, in terms of going back and then Under the Dome 2000. I mean, there's some other ones in there, but yeah, I just feel like he's been doing some different things, and in some cases hitting some like 11/22/63. I think is one of the best in King's pantheon. But yeah, this is a cool throwback to like his old like. This feels like something King may have written in the 80s. Like
it's got the very anti-government feel, which he had in Carrie, in Firestarter, in
like
a lot of those
in the 1970s, like stuff that he probably came up with in the 60s and 70s, like in the Vietnam era that he was kind of growing up in. Like it just feels like if King came out tomorrow and said, "Hey, the Institute is actually something I wrote in 1979," and just left the manuscript in a drawer, I would not be surprised. Like he would have had to have gone through and brushed up some things, like
made it modern.
Phones and computers and whatever. But ultimately, like those things are so small that it's like. Yeah, this easily could have been like something you wrote decades ago, which I really enjoyed. What about you? I have a couple others for liked, but anything thoughts on?
I always like when King writes about kids.
Yeah.
I mean, Firestarter, Carrie are all big on my list.
Yeah.
Not that I'm against ones where he's writing about adults. I mean, obviously, I love The Stand, I love The Shining, but even The Shining has Danny. Doctor Sleep has Abra and the other kids from what's happening in the story. He's really good with kids. I mean, even like The Long Walk, he was good with that, with kids and adolescents and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I love the fact that we get Luke's terrified and like he's been kidnapped, but then she touches his knee. I just spaced on her name.
Kalisha.
Kalisha. I wanted to call her Shah.
Yeah, which
she
is
just
what
says
they call her.
don't call me Sport. That's right.
Yeah.
But yeah, Kalisha touches his knee and he like gets the tingle and he talks about like what he used to do with his buddy and they used to dream about getting kissed and then he gets kissed and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like that stuff. King is a masterpiece at writing that kind of stuff. He's just brilliant at writing that stuff. So whenever I hear, oh, it's about a boy who's kidnapped and he has to overcome this, okay, I'm great. I'm there. Like,
yeah.
That's something that I'm gonna like.
Yeah.
Not that I don't like the stuff with just adults.
Yeah.
I loved The Outsider.
Yeah.
Loved it.
Yeah.
Really did.
11/22/63.
11/22/63. The youngest kids that we realistically deal with in there are some neighborhood kids.
Yeah.
But they're
I even say like
small
Under the
parts.
Dome is it has kids in it, but like they're nowhere near the center of the story.
No.
Like it's adults that are so I get what you're saying, totally.
So the fact that he went back to having a kid lead.
Yeah. Which is actually what was my next one too, was a similar thing is I think he does well with kids in general. I think the relationship was done well. Ultimately, if you really boil this book down to just the nuts and bolts, I'd say this would be a very boring book. But the reason it's not is because the kids, how he built the kids character-wise and how they interact with each other and their relationships is what drives the story. And it makes it, there's a whole stretch, if you really think about it, that literally if you were just say, well, this is what happens, and not feeling of like, there's a relational stuff going on, you would be like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, something like close to a third or maybe half the book is just like fucking nothing. Like, it would be unheard of, but it's like the reason that it's not boring is because these characters.
Because of the characters, yeah.
And he did a good job with them. So, and yeah, that's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see, did you have any other thoughts in terms of positive for it?
The escape was suspenseful, and I look forward to seeing it on film.
Yeah.
It really kept me kind of on the edge of my seat. It's one of those instances, because you mentioned it earlier that we listen to audiobooks. So when I listened to the Institute, I was still working and everything. Drive to work, 2 15-minute breaks, half-hour lunch, the drive home. It's one of the rare instances where I got home and instantly put my headphones on and continued listening.
Yeah.
Because I had to get through that section.
Yeah.
There's sections like that that I will do. King is the master at all of those.
Yeah.
I mean, I could just name a couple off the top of my head for King's works where I have to continue reading at that point. If I get to the Prom and Carrie, I'm not stopping. That's just
Traveler's Rest.
Traveler's Rest is one.
There was a point that in my latest read that I did, I think I was like just getting home or something. Like
You
right as
sat
that
in the
scene
car?
started, and I just sat in the car. I'm like,
Yep.
I can either save this for the drive to work tomorrow, or I could just listen to the whole thing right now. And I listened to the whole thing.
Of course you did. Another one is the actual battle in Wolves of the Kala. I won't listen to that.
Yeah.
And then I also make sure to make a point that from when Roland's asking, I just spaced on his name, the artist in book 7, him, Oi, and the artist.
Oh, now that you ask me, now I'm blanking. Yeah.
Patrick.
Yeah.
When he asked Patrick to stay awake, from there to the end, that's one section now for me.
Yeah. No, yeah, I have.
I can't break that up.
Yeah, I have those too.
That escape scene is up there now with me.
Yeah.
That is
Blaine,
everything,
obviously,
Blaine.
big one.
Mm-hmm. Whenever I hit Lud in book 3, I go download book 4.
Yeah.
That's just what I do.
That's wise.
So for me, that escape, that the whole part of the escape and everything like that. Also, what I will say that I love seeing the counter side of it. I see Luke escaping. I would love to see how long it takes them to figure it out, what they do when they figure it out, their initial response, them trying to figure out where he went, how he could have gotten there, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Because it always is like white knuckled, like, holding onto the steering wheel while I'm driving down the road. No. He didn't take the boat. Look somewhere else. You bitch! You found the boat.
Reminds me of some Grand Admiral Thrawn.
Oh yeah.
That kid.
How the fuck did he figure that out?
Okay, so the next one for me is a like, but I guess it's a like that's not easy to talk about. But I guess it ultimately comes down to like art reflects reality if it's meaningful, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that like art can reflect reality and not necessarily be preachy, and I think that this did a good job of that, because as I really thought about this, like in the abstract, like it was actually, I think when we were at Dr. Sleep, like just at the theater, I got there a little early, and then even just waiting in the theater for the movie to start, just thinking about thinking about this book in the abstract, and I thought to myself, like, you know what, like this is like it reflects reality in a few ways. First, the ones that are set in just the reality of and the idea of robbing kids of their normal lives through abuse. I mean, you get the Catholic sex abuse scandal, the Penn State scandal. I mean, the Epstein thing is still fairly in the news, which I know that was before this book was written, but like you've got that where you've got, children being abused, like those things, like this is analogous to those things, right? Like it's people that, I mean, these ones are a tiny bit different because you've ultimately got, it's not about like saving the world and abusing kids. It's just abusing kids for people doing it for their own pleasure. But like it does reflect those things, and I think those things are big in society overall. I mean, like I said, the Epstein thing's big right now. The Catholic thing still hasn't really subsided heavily. Penn State, this stuff just seems to come up all the time. So it's just
even just like human trafficking in general.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
not even like specific cases where it ties to like Penn State or Epstein or the Catholic Church, but just like, I mean, like I saw one, it came across my Facebook where it was I just spaced on his name.
An airline.
No. It was what's his name? It's an actor. He was in that '70s show, one of the idiot ones.
Ashton Kutcher.
Ashton Kutcher. He's like devoted his life to stopping human trafficking.
Yeah,
great human being. I saw one of his speeches to Congress came across.
Yeah,
where he was talking to a congressional board and everything like that. I watched the whole thing and was moved to tears at the end of it, like his pleading and everything like that. It's something that is very real. Is people take the innocence from children.
Yeah,
and shit like that happens on a daily basis. It's happening right now. It's just fucking sucks.
And this is somewhat reflective of that, I guess. And I'd go even one step further. And let's see, Mark said something. Stranger Things.
Oh yeah, talking about the Institute.
Yeah. But I even went one step further, and this goes more into like history and stuff, because I couldn't help but think about ancient history and the killing of children for a better or more secure future. You got things like Molech / Baal Haman of like in the Mideast. You had like these religions, like I think Carthage was one of them that Baal Haman was big in, where they just massacred children to this god Baal Haman. And like Molech, I believe, is like some interpretation of that in the Bible that's talked about the same thing. You got Aztecs, Incans, Mayans, all of them have like human child sacrifices in their culture. And all of these things are to appease like some god. The Quran talks about pagan Arabs that sacrifice children to God. So this is like a universal thing, it seems like, in some ways, towards gods. And also the other one I wanted to mention is looking into this, because I was just like trying to remember some of the ones, and sadly I found out that Uganda actually has it in the 21st century. Here in the last 19 years, they've been busted for religious sacrificing of children. And ultimately for these things, they're all usually in the context of religion, but like, is this any different? Like these people, aren't they just as zealous? And they're not necessarily doing it to a god, but doing it towards world peace and security. Like that's their god.
An
idea. That's their golden idol that they've got, and it's allowing them to basically destroy and kill children, right?
Innocence,
it's just so like I couldn't help but think of those things when it came to like the ancient ones came to my mind almost immediately. I was like, well, Aztec and I was thinking, I couldn't remember the name. I had to look it up, like the Baal Haman thing, but like that came to my mind instantly. I'm like, there's societies that like, to ensure a good harvest. I mean, which kind of gets into like wolves of the call a little bit, but it's like to ensure a harvest, to weather, like just things literally that would be your life or death. Like for those societies, like a good harvest or a bad harvest is the difference between your society continuing or not,
Yeah.
a volcano going off and destroying your society. Like there's a number of things that, like these like superstitions and stuff that ultimately led them to sacrificing people. And, that's almost a universal truth.
Yeah.
But children is a little bit more unique, but that came to my mind.
It's not just a trope that Hollywood uses for a reason.
Yeah.
I mean, it actually has happened in human history.
Yeah, multiple times.
Yeah. So it's not just something like like the Holocaust that happens with children, or like was it Somalia in the early 90s where we had to get involved because they were like starving people. And obviously children are obviously going to be a big impact on that because they need nutrition to grow and and everything. So it's always like the sick and the young and the old that are impacted. It's not just stuff like that. You're specifically talking about the ones that they did this on purpose to children
specifically,
to please some idol, some god, some
which
idea.
I saw almost I just felt it was analogous to what we see here.
What
like
the Institute's
yeah,
doing.
it's just like they're not calling it, Molech or, whatever fucking name they're giving it. They're just calling it, I'm saving the world by doing this. I'm making sure that nukes don't fly. I'm making sure that like, whatever, they're justifying it. But yeah, it just found I enjoyed that. I know that's a terrible thing, but like I enjoyed the fact that it was like somewhat reflective of both our history and our present when it comes to like the sexual abuse of just basically robbing children of their innocence and basically ruining their lives, because like the kids in this that survive, like their lives are ruined. Like they're, Luke's never gonna be normal again.
No.
Like there's no way to get past something like this. Like you can move past in some ways, but those scars are always going to be there, and
yeah, the same with the others too.
Yeah.
Especially the ones that came from back half.
Yeah.
Kalisha, I just spaced on
Nick.
his- Nick.
Yeah.
I wanted to call him Mike for some reason, but yeah, Nick. Those other ones, they went through some serious shit to come out the other side, and they're gonna have to live with that for the rest of their lives, looking over their shoulders. There's always going to be that fear there and everything like that.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see that you bring this up, and it kind of just sparked something in a memory from the first time I read it. I didn't catch it on my second time reading it, but luckily you brought it up, and it sparked something in me. I brought this up before. I don't know if I've necessarily talked about it on the podcast, but I know that I've talked to you about this. I love when someone takes a story or history and spins it a different way. The example that I always use is it's a horrible reference, but it works, is Twilight. Sparkling vampires. It's the reason they don't go out in the sun. They don't burst into flames. It's a myth that's built off of that. The movie Troy, where Brad Pitt's character Troy gets shot multiple times, but he pulls all the arrows out, but the one in his ankle stays. So you can kind of see where like the legend was born from that.
Yeah, it's kind of like not really a retcon, but
similar to that. It's interesting to see King do that with modern history, because there's a very powerful graph about World War II where it just represents like all the lives lost. But at the end of the video, they talk about how little war we've had since World War II.
Yeah, the Great Peace.
It's called the Great Peace. It's interesting that he literally took the Institute and kind of just spun it that they're the reason for that.
Yeah.
There would have been World War III and World War IV and possibly World War V in the, what are we at, 70 years?
The alternate universe.
We're at 70 years now from?
75-ish,
75-ish, something like that from the end of World War II, that we would have had more major wars.
Yeah.
And we haven't because of them.
Yeah.
I always love it when someone does that, even if it makes me like cringe.
Yeah.
Towards them.
So here's the question I've got, kind of using that as an example that just hit me as you were saying that. What aspects of history would you lay on the Institute? Like
JFK.
I was going to say JFK is the one that came to mind. Like, is JFK?
Well, I mean, he's already covered it in 11/22/63.
Robert Kennedy, maybe,
which is really easy to talk about. JFK, Robert Kennedy. This isn't the first time that he's also delved into this. You haven't read it, but I went through and read it after the talk about it. I went and read The Dead Zone.
Yeah, yeah.
And this guy is, not to spoil the Dead Zone, but the purpose of the Dead Zone, the whole story of the Dead Zone, is what would you do if you had psychic powers that if you touched someone, you would get a flash of their future? And if you touched a small politician from a small state, you touched his hand and found out that he's going to be president one day, and he's going to cause World War III and nukes are going to fly.
Yeah, I'd shoot him.
Okay,
I'd execute the motherfucker,
that's the question. Then
I'm like Rhodey in Endgame. Why don't we just go back and find when Thanos is a baby and just like first of all, that's terrible. Like I get what Hulk's saying there, but no, I agree. Like I'm very pragmatic. We've talked about this. I follow Roland for the most part in that way of like let the pragmatism win out. Like
so it's like and I'm sure this is going to come up. So I'm not going to bring it up, but I'm sure, that's the big thing there at the end is with Bill Smith. Can I just call him John Smith for the love of God? It just sounds wrong saying Bill Smith.
Before they even talked about it, what did you picture because she referenced the lisping man, even before she mentioned what she pictured him looking like?
Kevin Spacey in The Blacklist.
The Blacklist.
It's a TV show. He wears a...
Oh, that's not Kevin Spacey. That's you're talking...
Not Kevin Spacey.
Yeah,
I always mix those two up. Robert California.
Yeah, I'm blanking on his name right now.
Yeah.
I always do because like for me it's Daniels from Stargate. Like that's like always going to be what, and like he did Ultron. But Spader, James Spader.
James Spader. Yeah. James Spader is instantly who I pictured.
Yeah.
When they talked about the lisping man and described him physically and everything like that, that's instantly who I thought about.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, like, I don't know, but like, it's one of those weird things where it probably would have just been like, I know that the ages don't work, but like someone that just like, if this were set in like the 60s, like my picture would have been like of someone that you just looked at and went, oh yeah, he escaped like from World War II. He was certainly wearing the wrong colors and was snuck himself out. Yeah, I just pictured him being like that stereotypical Aryan, just
blonde hair, blue eyes,
Operation Paperclip to the end.
Mm-hmm.
Like I just pictured him just being like this like wiry, weaselly, like, but like has like this strong German, like, and not to like badmouth German. It just I just pictured it like, I almost want to say something for Indiana Jones, but there's nothing in Indiana Jones that matches.
Not German, but like the fanaticism of the Nazi party kind of thing.
But
it's not the German people. It's just that era of Germans is what you're talking about.
Just someone that you'd look at and go like, yeah, that guy should have been arrested and tried.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, but he escaped. Like there was just some that's like, again, for me, I will mention right now too, because like I didn't really get into like any casting in this on my notes, because ultimately for me, I have nothing, dude. Not a single person in this is anything more than like a shadowy figure. Mm-hmm. Like I didn't pin down, and that's not a bad thing. That's not saying anything on King, because even if he were to describe them, which I think he does in some cases, it doesn't mean a lot for me. Like I pictures come to me differently, and I mean there's Dark Tower characters for me that are like shadowy, and that's just the way I read it. Just
for Bill Smith, as soon as he got out of the little Toyota, I think is what they said, or a Honda Civic, some no-name car, as soon as he got out and started talking, I pictured James Spader from The Blacklist.
Okay.
I've never even watched that show. I've just seen like the trailers for it.
Yeah.
But if you watch the trailer for The Blacklist, basically he fits the bill of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Someone who belongs in prison, if not hung.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. If I understand the premise for The Blacklist, and please forgive me if I get this wrong, fans of The Blacklist, it's a notorious criminal who Hannibal Lecters his way out of going to prison for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
Oh, use me and I'll give you X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
I have a list of people that I can help you bring down.
Yeah.
But I only am going to work with this one agent.
Yeah.
As far as I understand it, that's the premise for the show.
Yeah.
So he's like a detestable, horrible piece of shit, helping the good guy. So it's like, can you trust him? Can you not trust him? Is he going to build up trust? What's his real motivation? That kind of thing. So it's an interesting premise for a show.
Yeah.
But that's instantly what I thought of.
Okay.
When he got out and started talking about like the greater good.
Yeah.
And I'm not bad. And it's just like, you piece of shit. What you did to kids.
Yeah. So I guess I thought of a better way to put it. Let's just say I pictured him as though I was in the 1950s and there was a very shifty German scientist that just got here to America. And maybe like just had like that aura about him of like, don't trust this motherfucker. And that's what I mean, like wiry, small, like if I had to picture something, but again, it was always shadowy for me, but if I had to, it would just be like a very like science-y, thin, frail, like like rat face, like I don't know, but in general they're all shadows to me, so I didn't really like I have no like, which is almost good, I think. And then maybe it's part of me knowing that there's an adaptation shortly coming, that they just, my mind kept it that way, because now there's gonna be no castings that bother me. Like whatever they do is gonna be fine.
Yeah.
Now I don't have a lot, but I was gonna move over to any gripes. Did you have any gripes with the book?
1 second, I'm pulling up a picture. This is James Spader as his character in Blacklist.
Yeah.
Like, does that not just scream like, motherfucker, they should be locked up in prison?
Yeah.
Like seriously.
Yeah.
Like that's what I pictured getting out of the car and fucking talking to them, as that guy.
Yeah.
So I wanted to show you that. But any gripes for the book?
Yeah. And you don't have to have any. It's just a topic I had. I have a couple, but I was just curious if you had anything that, because I'll say right off the top, for me, before I even get to mine, is I really enjoyed the book, and all these gripes are minor, and none of them take away from my overall enjoyment.
Yeah, let me do that first before I dive into gripes. Let me praise first before anything.
Which we did. I mean, we talked about the positives we liked first.
Well, we did talk about just like positives, but I never got like overall for the book and everything like that. I mean, for me, it's a solid read. It is definitely one that I will be coming back to, because I love King's storytelling, like I said, when it comes to kids and everything like that. The big thing for me with this one is that I really liked the coming together into prey with Tim and Luke is going to always be something that I look forward to. There's certain aspects of King's books that I look forward to. That it's I hurry up to get there kind of thing. With Carrie, it's prom. I always I want to see what happens with prom, on all the testimonies and everything like that with the book and everything like that. There's parts in the Firestarter, and I know you haven't read it. There's parts in the Firestarter that I hurry up to get to. Then it's like one of those sections where it's like, I don't want to rush it, but I have to listen to it in one chunk.
Yeah.
I mentioned it earlier that Escape with the Institute is going to be one. If I had to say one gripe, I would say it was very kind of almost too easy for them to get out of it in the end. I expected a little bit more King difficulty. I kept expecting something to go wrong. Yeah. And nothing ever did.
Yeah.
So that kind
like of in the tail end, you're talking
when they're back at the Institute, like
okay,
get us a bus, get the kids, that kind of thing.
Okay.
It almost felt too easy.
Yeah.
And I'm, part of me wonders.
I was waiting for another shoe to drop in some way.
Right. A part of me wonders is that because he's thinking about possibly a sequel or something?
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not very often that King has not been coming back to books recently.
Yeah.
Mr. Mercedes, The Outsiders tied to Mr. Mercedes.
Yeah.
Dr. Sleep. We do have the exception that proves the rule with 11/22/63 that's a standalone.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know which way it's going to go. If I had to say I had a gripe, it would be that it was kind of anticlimactical that they just were able to go back and get exactly what they wanted.
Yeah. I mean, they lose most of the kids.
True. Kids that couldn't have been saved anyway.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean
apart from Avery.
Yeah, as I'll say, with the one exception.
But, aside from that, it was just kind of like, no, I mean, like, go back and look at, like, It, for example.
Yeah. No, I get
everything that could go wrong seems like it does go wrong. Mike gets stabbed. Eddie dies. It's just like things go wrong.
Yeah.
Things go wrong all the time in the Dark Tower. Things go wrong in Cujo. I mean, for God's sakes, Tad dies in Cujo.
The Stand, I mean, how many of the four that are going to stand, 5 if you count the dog, how many of them actually make it to that final moment?
Look at what Stu has to go through to get back to Boulder,
Yeah.
It's not easy. It felt way too easy for the Institute. It's almost like it should have been another
here's the question.
150 pages.
That's actually something, longer is definitely an interesting thing. But here's the question, though. Is it easier because of how difficult the Escape was and the Dupre stuff was? Is it maybe King letting the downhill slide be easy because everything went so wrong on those two previous things, and maybe it would feel like, because I think there is a balance and there is a level where you get to piling on. Even like when I've been looking at some ideas and stuff, there's times with like the short that I shot that, like, Caden and I were talking about different ideas, and I was just like, at a certain point I was like, no, like there were some other ideas that came up and you haven't seen it yet, but like there were some things that came up idea wise, I was just like, no, that goes too far. Like there's a balance. I think
there's too much.
There comes a point when you're just really shitting on someone as a character, and I wonder if and I don't think that's something that's unique to me. I think everyone sees that, because eventually there comes a point when the audiences are just like, dude, are you fucking kidding me? Like, and is it possible that that's it? Because I feel you, so I think I agree with you, but I'm just saying, playing devil's advocate, maybe King let it go a little bit easier because he knew Avery was going to get lost. That's probably one of the bigger, again, I listed him as a lead. Then that shootout, you lost a lot of people, and then his escape is ultimately a really shitty circumstance.
I mean, like, let's be perfectly honest. We lost a lot of people that we didn't give a shit about in the shootout. I mean, like, no. I mean, it comes down to it. I mean,
love
like,
the sheriff, by the way.
Oh no,
he's one of my favorite characters.
You love the sheriff, but did you know the sheriff? Name the sheriff's kids. No, we didn't ever get to meet. Anyone from the sheriff's side. We didn't get to know them. That's my point. It's the same thing as like like when The Stand hits. Yes, it sucks that Larry's mom dies. But do we give a shit that the rest of New York City's dying too? No, because we don't know them. We don't care about them.
Yeah.
We weren't introduced to them.
That goes to the old Stalin quote, right? One death is a tragedy, a million is a statistic.
Yeah. No, so it just comes down to it. I mean, like, do you care that the waitress that Larry was, hitting on the phone call died? I mean, like, did she cross your mind at all? That's the thing, is like, the people in and that's what I'm saying, is that maybe it felt like I got kind of cheated out of something because those characters weren't supposed to mean anything.
I guess for me it was empathy towards Tim that would have been very close with all those people up to that point. So I guess for me, like, it's more of just like letting that get inserted from the element of like what this would be for Tim, and also it decimates the town, right? Like that's their whole police force gets wiped out basically. Like
aside from
what the fuck happens to that town? There was the one that was on vacation, because they mentioned when she comes back she'll probably be the sheriff. So it's like, but like, yeah, like that's they pretty much wiped out that town's police force, and in a small town like that, I don't think that it's a snap to bring that back. Like that'd be a tough. So I get what you're saying though, totally, and that actually segues nicely, and you slightly touched on it. My first gripe was I don't think it's long enough overall. The book itself, I think it felt rushed. I feel like they could have grabbed 50%. It was 576. Divide that in half, add that number of pages to the top of this, and I think it would have been good.
Yeah,
in my opinion, it is good. It's a good book. It would have been way better because, for me, I felt I didn't know enough of the people in Dupre. Yeah. That was minimal for me. What I want to know more of is the Institute. Why didn't I get in Sixby's head more, or Stackhouse, or some of these characters,
or even Bill Smith?
Because him, I like keeping him a little bit more nebulous, because I think that matches his character. But ultimately, like we do get some, like when they argue to other people from their side, we kind of get where they're coming from. But it'd be interesting to see more from them too, because like I don't know, there was just part of me that just felt like if this book were longer, I just think it would have been, it probably would, I think it would have elevated it to the next level. And I think this would, because I feel like King does great when he goes longer in general. Like
it's because he gives you more for the character, so that you can actually care about them.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying about.
Or
that's
hate
what I'm
them.
saying about.
I mean, it could be.
Exactly.
Too.
That's what I'm saying about Dupre. Is like the hotel owner. Yeah, he's a sleazeball that rats out Luke. But am I supposed to hate him? I got 3 scenes with him total.
Would you not do the same thing
if you were him?
$500 a month to just be on call?
On call.
You don't ask questions.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I don't know. I can't say that that'd be a deal that a lot of people would turn down. They don't. You're not going to know what's behind it. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, they're just like, hey, if we ever need you, we're going to call you up for information. Pay you $500 a month, like
for information.
Yeah, it's like
for what's going on around in your town. That's it.
Yeah.
In your neighborhood.
Yeah.
That's it.
Like you might interpret it as kind of like a big brotherish type, whatever. Like you're just helping the government that's trying to like keep an eye on things. Like you may believe in that.
It's for the greater good.
Yeah. Second time you brought up, that's not, a Hot Fuzz reference, but I can never hear that.
Oh no,
without
that was
thinking of Hot Fuzz.
absolutely a Hot Fuzz reference. The greater good.
Which is
Shot it.
which best comedy of the last 25 years, without a doubt. For me.
Wow.
Yeah, like
That includes Liar Liar.
yeah, easy. I mean,
Wow.
Yeah, like the ones that are just outside of that I would I would struggle is Airplane and Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Those are the ones for me that are like, I don't know how Hot Fuzz stacks against those, but I could easily say that almost any other I love Hot Fuzz so much.
Interesting.
So yes, I would have liked to have been longer ultimately, but again, minor gripes. I loved the book I did love the book as it was. These are just things that small gripes I had that I maybe would have made me liked it more if they were.
It's also
resolved.
just part of it of us being selfish. We always want more.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely.
I mean,
yeah.
it's just something that we've always talked about. I mean, I'm pretty sure in our Unfound Door episode of The Stand is that, hey, I wanted more with this character. Hey, I wanted more with this.
Yeah.
And everything like that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So it's not something new, and it's definitely not a knock on the book whatsoever. It tells a story. It tells a great story.
Yeah.
With a great beginning, middle, and end, like a book should have.
Yeah.
Acts are perfectly broken up in there. You can definitely tell the difference between them. I think the biggest thing lacking from this is more into Prey.
Yeah.
I get where you're coming from with the Institute, but I love when I don't get to see all of the bad guys' motivation.
But it's world building for me, right? Like,
I get it.
Behind it is such this bigger thing that it's like, let me see more. And I'm only going to get that through 6B. Like, I don't care about her personal life. Like, I'll take it if you were going to give it to me to give me more illumination on her character. I don't even need that though. But I just want to know more about everything. Like
no, see, that's where it leaves it all mysterious.
No,
you have to build it in your head, and
anything
that you build is going to be 10 times worse than what King builds.
Yeah,
because we know our imaginations, and that's why a lot of authors do this.
Arthur Eld,
Arthur Eld. Say thank you, Si. Will always do this. Is they leave it to the imagination.
Oh, absolutely.
It takes a very different kind of author to explain every little detail to you. So the fact that we don't get much, dude, the suspense where she's like, I have to pick up the phone. Like, what do they call it? I spaced on what they called the phone. The special phone, the red phone. The one that calls the Kremlin or whatever the hell.
I thought of it as the Batman phone.
The Bat phone. That's a great one.
That's
I was doing the red phone that calls the Kremlin.
Yeah, but
Red Alert
wasn't
2.
Batman's red?
Pretty sure it was.
Went to Commissioner Gordon and stuff like that. Yeah, every time, even when I see those like to the Kremlin or whatever. No, to me that's the Batman phone.
The Bat phone. Like, it's the Bat phone, not the Batman phone.
Somebody at the White House was watching the Batman show back in the day and was like, "That's a good idea." And then the next day there was a red phone.
There was a red phone.
I guarantee it. There's no other option.
It didn't go anywhere. It just when you pulled it up, it just went just on a loop.
No, it was just Adam West just raving, like just going on and on and on and on, and he just listens. The only other complaint I had, and I don't know that I've necessarily. It's funny because actually, as I was looking into some research on this, I saw some people that were kind of cribbing this as almost like a normal thing for King, kind of like endings, right? Because people always shit on King about endings.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is this? I actually found like maybe not as heavy as that, but people are like, "Oh yeah, King again," And I don't know if I've ever noticed this before, but dude, I cringe so hard. He doesn't. These kids are not kids. They're kids written by a 70-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
No fucking way does a 12-year-old. I don't care how fucking smart he is. There's no way he has a Ramones poster on his wall. There's no fucking way him and his goddamn friend are excited to watch a fucking Paul Newman and Steve McQueen movie on cable eating popcorn. No fucking way. I'm sorry. But I am a movie fucking lover. It took me until high school and beyond before I started getting to the realm where I can go like, yes, I want to watch The Godfather. Yes, I want to watch like dude, me when I'm 12, I don't want to watch fucking The Godfather. I don't want to watch like some of my all-time favorite movies right now. I would not have liked at 12.
Yep.
So it's just one of those things. Like, and I think kids are even more fickle now. I mean, there's kids now that don't want to watch a movie because it's 2 hours. A YouTube video is only 5 minutes. Like, it just felt very 70-year-old, with a 12-year-old puppet that was like speaking through the puppet.
Love the Ramones.
Yeah, and I'm just like, I get King is in his 70s, and I'm not bad mouthed, but there were just times where there was some things that he put in their heads, or mentioned that I was just like, no, I'm sorry, like that's
projection.
It just doesn't feel right, man. I'm sorry. The Steve McQueen and Paul Newman one is the one where I'm just like, what fucking 12-year-old watches Paul Newman?
You make a valid point. It's like something that's a trope in novels is that there's always seems like there's those kids that like those special things, and I'm different because I like Steve McQueen movies.
Yeah.
I have experience with kids. I have a very huge family that I've married into. There's not a single kid in that family that likes old movies.
Like I said, and I've loved movies my whole life. Like some of the, I mean, if you listen to my other show, like I talk about it all the time. Like my newest episode was on the Terminator. Like that movie was one of the definitive things of my life. But it's like that movie was pretty much a couple years old when I saw it, and I couldn't get into Terminator 1. It was just different. There was something about it.
It wasn't as good as Terminator 2 because it didn't have as much action.
Yeah. It was just, and there was even an element of it just felt old for some reason, and it wasn't that like it was that. It's way older now than it was then, obviously, but like it just felt different, and like so even there's just me. It's like if me as like a huge movie lover from basically the what is it, knee-high to a grasshopper, I just can't. Maybe if he liked it, but his friend hated it. That would be a little bit more realistic to me, because at least then it's just like, okay, cool, it has something to do with him just being like fucking Einstein. But then his friend hates it. But like both him and his friend, like, oh, we ate popcorn and watched it. Like no, I'm sorry. No. So writing it, that's fine, because those kids were in the time period he would have been a kid, so all the references fits, right? But yeah, there's just there was a few times that happened in this book where it tweaked me a bit, where I'm just like, dude, what fucking kid this age likes this stuff?
To go into like what we're talking about here, where a character likes old movies. Holly Gibney loves old movies.
Yeah.
But she's in her 30s.
Yeah.
Which is where you are now.
Yeah. Like
it makes sense that an adult could get into something like that.
Yeah.
But I got to be honest with you. Correct me if I'm wrong here, audience. I've never met a kid like that. I've never met a kid that's like, yeah, I'm all about the old monster movie.
Yeah, I mean, to the joke from Infinity War, for God's sake. Have you seen this really old movie, Aliens? Or have you seen this really old movie, Empire Strikes, or Star Wars, whatever he said in Civil War?
How old is this kid?
Yeah, but it's like, okay, it's a fun little joke, but like legitimately, for like there were some people that did the math. They're like, well, Empire Strikes Back to him would be the same as movie X for us at this, like, and people
Gone with the Wind,
and people
it was Gone with the Wind.
Maybe
us.
not that far, but like people in like the people that would have been in the 60s or 70s, like what would. Yeah, maybe it would have been that old. But,
exactly.
But it's just one of those things. Yeah, I just again, I get it. King's the writer, but it was funny as I was looking into some things on this. There's people that were like, kind of like, here we go again on that. I was like, wait, really? Like I had a gripe with that, but I didn't realize that people were like tracking this. And there's like in my head, I couldn't think of him. Like it falls into like his timeline. He could have just wrote his own childhood for their references, right? The movies they watched would have been movies he would have watched, and on and on. But yeah, there was just a few moments there, and again, very small nitpick, but it did grind my gears a tiny bit. But that's all I had for gripes. Just the two. I wanted it longer, and maybe don't make the 12-year-old kids all about movies that are old. I mean, dude, there's people my age that I'm like, hey, you should watch this movie. Nah, I don't like movies that are that old. Like I hear that. Like I'm just like, there was a thing on Twitter I saw recently. Like, hey, if you were gonna sell to a younger person, like someone that's high school or whatever, an older movie, what would you give them to like maybe show them that old movies are not that bad? And one of the answer I gave was 12 Angry Men, black and white, but I think that's a movie anyone could watch, and it's just, I feel like it's a great fucking movie. And but I wouldn't suppose that giving that to an 18-year-old would be I think that'd be way more successful than me trying to give that to a 12-year-old and going, hey, like my niece, like she's not, I don't know, she's right in that realm somewhere age-wise. Like I fully wouldn't expect to go and give her a DVD of 12 Angry Men and say, hey, watch this, because I don't think she's gonna like it. But if it was a kid that just graduated, that started at work or something, I'm like, and he's into movies, yeah, I'll give it to him, because I think at that age he might be able to get into it. So I don't know. I don't want to ham that too hard, but that was something.
And that's where your argument was, is that yes, maybe Luke is in that age thing because he is getting
but
ready.
Rolf wouldn't have been.
He's ready to get into go to college, everything like that. But Rolf wouldn't be.
Yeah, he would be like, oh, screw this, man. Let's throw on
SpongeBob.
And they do mention SpongeBob one point, which is good, or whatever, YouTube, whatever. But yeah, that was made me.
Honestly, if it had been YouTube and he had mentioned like a YouTube streamer or something instead of Steve McQueen movie, honestly, would have just made it world building. It's just it makes it modern.
Yeah. So maybe King just needs to like ask a grandkid, like, hey, what do you watch, and then throw that in the book. I don't know. So now some questions. So we kind of knew the premise going in. We kind of thought that, or no, I already asked this one about where did you think Tim would fit in. I already asked that one, so let me go ahead and move on to the next one. What did you think of the parents being killed? Like us seeing it from the storytelling perspective. Did that throw you off at all?
No.
Especially because he doesn't know, right? Because he's not going to know for a good while.
Mm-hmm. It didn't really throw me off because have you read Firestarter yet?
No.
Okay, so Firestarter, woman, man, go to science experiment in college, government funded drug experiment, supposed to be just like some sort of out trip on LSD.
Groovy.
They end up falling in love. They both end up with a little bit of powers from the drug.
Yeah.
And have their daughter who has powers.
Yeah.
When the government finds out about said daughter, they come back for her. In their attempt to get her, they kill the wife. And they make it perfectly clear that we may need to keep the dad or kill the dad, depending on, the relationship and everything like that. But most likely we'll need to keep him as kind of leverage on the daughter who has powers.
Yeah.
So it was something that I kind of expected going in.
Okay.
Especially like as soon as they pull up in the van and they're like, here's a gun. It's like, okay, well obviously I know what that's for.
Yeah. And see me, I wasn't in that same headspace. For me, I thought gun maybe for defense. If something had to happen, like they have it to defend themselves.
In 2019, there's different ways to defend yourself besides a gun. If they were going to be looking at pacifying without making noise, why would they not take stun guns or tasers?
Well, no, it could even be a thing like if you get seen, then you got to kill the person because like they saw you. But if they're in bed, you just leave, and now the kid's just going to look like a runaway, right? And like, okay, even if the parents are around to like whine and cry, like what are they going to end up maybe on the National Enquirer saying their kids was, like may have been abducted? Like, no, it would just, so there was part of me that I didn't expect it. And I was actually almost rooting that it didn't happen. And when it did, I was kind of bummed out. But I found it interesting because the reason I thought about it is because I thought to myself, what if we hadn't heard and we found out with him? You know what? And then that's when I realized like, no, that he had to show us because we had to know, because think about all the times that he goes to the website but doesn't go to it because he doesn't want it. Dude, can you imagine if we didn't know? Can you imagine like can you imagine being completely out of the know? Because like for him, yes, emotionally he needs to realize like I can't handle that right now. But us as readers, we'd be like, I want to fucking know. Click the goddamn link, motherfucker. Like
do it now.
Because like ultimately that also I think, but it also adds a lot of weight too. Because I feel like once the parents are dead, you realize this is no coming back.
He's
like,
truly alone.
Yeah, this is the end. Like there can be no happy ending. If we didn't know, like there would be some aspect of when they're telling the story about your mind's going to be erased and you'll be sent back. We probably may have even bought that as an audience because the parents are still alive. But once so there's part of me that like they kind of upset maybe some drama. But then when the second time through when he was looking, but then he doesn't, and looking, then he doesn't, and I was just like, no, dude, this would have driven any reader fucking nuts if we didn't know. Well,
also at the same time, what it did is it made our bad guys bad. Like, you're not sympathizing with them if they fucking killed your main character's parents in cold blood like that and kidnapped him. Then they're obviously lying, and if they're liars, this isn't going to go well.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you're going to get your mind wiped. You're not going to remember any of this. Just be a good little boy.
Yeah.
And we're going to send you back to your parents. Okay. I know not to trust these motherfuckers now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Luke doesn't know that, and hopefully Luke figures it out.
Yeah.
But I know not to trust these motherfuckers.
Yeah.
So for me, it was kind of needed.
Yeah. No.
When you look at it that way.
And like I said, I don't think that most readers would be able to handle that. Not like the teases from Luke if we didn't know.
There's no way.
Because we would want to know. So we'd be, oh, cool, he's finally going to look, and then he doesn't. Oh, he's finally going to look, and then he doesn't. Like, dude, we'd be getting pissed at it by that. So it's almost like a thing. Like, again, you almost make a deal with the audience. Like, I'll push you a little bit, but I'm not going to push you too hard. And I think that would have been too hard. That would have been one of those things where it's just like, Jesus fucking Christ, just tell me already, And if I would have had a book, I would have just started skipping ahead to try to find the answer and then go back. So yeah, no, that would that was just one question I had. How do you rank this in the new age of King? I guess like if you want to say like maybe even in this decade, kind of in the realm of like so call it like 11/22/63, Went Through the Keyhole, Dr. Sleep, Mr. Mercedes, Finders Keepers, End of Watch, The Outsider. Kind of
it's up there with them. I think it holds its own with all of those. I think it'll be a nice addition to my library and my rotation.
Okay.
Because basically we've talked about this off the air. Basically what I do is I just go through and I go to the bottom of my Audible for what I've listened to what I haven't listened to most recent, and that's what I downloaded and listened to.
Yeah.
And it's going to be one of those ones that it's going to be like, oh yeah, the Institute. Okay, let's go see what Luke's up to.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
it's going to be there for me. What about you?
For me, like I think it's good. I think it's maybe a little bit a step down from like, I mean, certainly from 11/22/63. I think most are down from that. But like, I don't know that I don't know if I dug it as much as like The Outsider, Mr. Mercedes, or some of these. Like I did enjoy it, but just maybe not on the same level. Like maybe more of like, 8s through 10s for some of these others. This one maybe felt closer to like a 6 or a 7. Like
Okay.
just I enjoyed it, but just maybe not as much.
Mhm.
And for instance, now I mean I know that like over the last 2 months now I've read it twice. There's part of me that's like I don't know if I'm ever going to read. I don't know
Oversaturated.
if I'm going to read it again. Now that of course might change down the road, but I mean for God's sake, dude, I haven't reread Dr. Sleep. I've only read 11/22/63 twice. I mean you've read it probably double that at this point. Like look at some of these others. I haven't read Mr. Mercedes again, and it's not that I don't like them, but there's just part of me that's like, like I mentioned in the last episode that there's times I have to go out and delve into like nonfiction stuff as well. And I just have different moods. I have podcasts and stuff. So for me, I don't go through as many books as you do. But like for me, 11/22/63 is probably top of my list of like I need to reread that sooner than later. But like I don't think I've read it since the first movie came out in 2017. I haven't reread it, so it's just like I guess I reread maybe less beyond outside of maybe The Stand and The Dark Tower. So maybe that doesn't say a lot. I guess now that I'm kind of talking it through, I don't think that says a whole lot. Just because I'm not really feeling a reread in any time in the distant future doesn't mean anything, because there's a lot of great books that share that. So. But I'd say it's certainly like it's not like a huge drop. Like I don't think this falls into the realm of like some of King's books where you're just like meh, like they're all right or not as great. Like it's not in that realm at all. So I guess it does sustain in the realm of like the golden age of King, the second golden age. So that's that one. Favorite character.
I really liked Luke.
Okay.
I did. Not a huge fan of Avery.
Really? I loved him, man. I really did. Like, and it was weird for me because it was almost in like a moment. I didn't like him at first, but like there was just one of those things. There was just a certain moment where I realized, like, dude, I fucking love this kid. Like, he's awesome. I don't know what it was, but he was great.
I liked Tim. Tim was pretty good. I was with you. I love the sheriff.
The sheriff was great. Yeah. Yeah. So okay. For me, like I said, for me it'd probably be Avery, probably one of my favorites. And I did enjoy Luke. Tim, I don't know. For me it's kind of hard.
Wish we would have had more.
Because I feel like I was connected with him at the first part, but when he comes back later in it, I don't think I really had that much connection to him.
Mm-mm.
It just felt kind of, again, if they would have added a couple hundred pages, add 300 pages to the book, it probably would have been different. But like for me, it just felt like
it's
okay, cool. Like, yeah, I know you, but like, it's more of like we've met a couple times, not like hey, we've hung out.
Yeah.
The
biggest problem with Tim is that what it comes down to is that if this is a miniseries, like let's say a 14-part miniseries, we get maybe an episode with Tim, and then the rest of it is Luke.
Yeah.
And then the last 3 episodes are Tim heavy. It's like, great, who's this motherfucker?
And see, they can't. They'll have to intercut more to allow Tim to show up throughout, right?
Yeah.
You can't just let a character disappear for, huge stretches
in
a show.
Which is my one gripe with this book is that we definitely needed more Tim.
Yeah.
To be able to. Yeah, he is a good guy. He is going to be a hero. He is going to be our guy.
Yeah.
The John Wayne kind of guy.
Yeah.
And
see,
we never really got that.
I was actually pissed when we left him at first, again, because I was connecting with them.
Mm-hmm.
So just to move away, I'm like, God damn it. So like I maybe came into Luke a little bit negative because I'm just like, I don't want to go. I don't care about this fucking kid right now. Give me more of this guy. Like, this is cool. Like, we're hearing about the Dobira brother, like the shooting there. You get like, there's cool shit going on. Like, and it felt kingy to me. That the Dupre was very kingish.
Small town.
Very small town. Very like whatever. It just felt right. So then to jump over to Luke, even though I knew that Luke was the lead, right? Like it's like, okay, the Institute's about kids and stuff. Like this is going to be the kid. But like, and ultimately it was very minimal because almost like Luke won me over pretty quick in his chapters. Yeah. But yeah, that's I did have a hard time with Tim on the second half. I didn't feel that on the second portion of Tim showing up, I was ever as connected to him as I was to start. and that maybe that was just me, but yeah, did they reveal that he was the one there on the forklift at first, or did he tease that out for a bit?
I think he teased it out for a little bit because it really took me. Oh shit, that's Tim.
Yeah,
and also I forgot his name.
Oh yeah, that doesn't help. I mean, it also it's also kind of an interesting thing that like for a main character that he gave him such a bland name in a way. Like Tim's very normal. Not necessarily something that's outstanding, because like if he would have had a more a stranger name, it probably would have stuck in your head more, right? Versus Tim. So Tim, the enchanter, isn't it? Right? Monty Python. Okay, so most hated character, and you gotta pick one.
Is this one that I just couldn't stand, or is this one like hated because they were the bad guy? Like
your lady from The Mist. Like
okay,
hated
that kind of hated, not like poorly written.
No, because I mean, is there any characters that you felt were poorly written? Because I personally don't. I mean, there was some that I didn't like because I didn't like the choice. Like sometimes like they'll build a character and I'm just like, meh, not my thing, and I move on.
Zigsby. Is that how you say it? Zigsby? Sigsby. She's a piece of shit.
Okay, yeah. I mean, she
should have got shot in both kneecaps, all 10 fingers.
When we had the original thing, like there's people that were mentioning like a Nurse Ratched type thing. And like at first I'm like, I wonder which one it's going to be. And it was just like, looking back in retrospect, it's like definitely, oh yeah, Sigsby's definitely, that's the Nurse Ratched. Like she's the one.
The whole, oh, I'm in pain, you can't treat me this way, I have to go to a hospital. Shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
With all that you've done, giving Avery the dunk test and everything like that, you fucking evil bitch.
Yeah. Like, there's no way to say this, it doesn't sound wrong, but like, before he sticks his finger in her, I was like, just fucking torture this woman. And so when he stuck his finger in the fucking bullet hole, I was just like, hallelujah, dude. Because I was cheering, I was wanting, I'm like, dude, because like that's me again. I'm not above bloodlust, and I was just like, hurt this person, like don't be a fucking goody good. Like just
take the gloves off.
Yeah, stick your fucking finger in her goddamn bullet hole so she could fucking feel it. And I didn't at all expect him to do it because usually,
well, he was a former cop. He's on the track to becoming a cop again.
Wasn't it Luke that did that? I thought it was.
I thought it was him.
I thought it was Luke.
Was it Luke?
And Tim kind of stopped Wendy from.
Oh, right. Dude, I totally spaced on that. Yeah, you're right. No, yeah.
Because even with his vitriol that would be totally just, there's just part of me that's like, he's your main character. I just don't see you letting him
it's like
torture.
It's what we talked about with Roland with the Dark Tower. You can't show him slaughtering men, women, and children and have him come out looking like a good guy.
Yeah, but I was just like, fucking torture her.
Yeah.
And then he does, and I'm like, yes! Fucking do it. And then finally, like they ease him back a little bit. I'm like, don't fucking ease him back. Just put another fucking hole in there and fucking like put the barrel in there. Just
no. And that's the thing is like for me, it was something that
she was terrible.
Yeah, she was horrible. I hated her so much.
Yeah, and I can't say that it was an easy race either. I mean Zeke, Stackhouse. I mean there's some
pretty fucked up people.
Yeah, and like it was funny. Gladys is the one that Nurse Ratched I was thinking at first. But like ultimately, I don't think she obviously wasn't it. It was Sigsby, but and
then Stackhouse is the one that
he's the one that's in charge at the end.
He's the one that
he's the head of security.
Let's gas the kids.
Yeah, he's
piece of shit.
The head of security. Yeah. But like he's like a shitty person all throughout, But like like Sigsby though, like it's hard to top her. It's hard. Yeah, kind of hard to top her deplorable nature. I think it'd be I don't think there's anyone else that would even rival her for me. Most emotional the book made you: happy, sad, glad, mad, or any emotion. Just like fist bump could be just like anger, like
you know what, I was actually pleasantly surprised that the fucking trained professionals got their ass kicked into Prey
by the town.
Yeah, that pleasantly surprised me. I was very fucking pleased with that because I mean, how many times have we seen that where it's like, oh, these cops have no idea what's coming for them.
Yeah.
I mean, we see it in like Punisher season 2.
Yeah,
it happens, and
we got to give credit to Annie. It's her, right? Like she's her. Yeah, she gets the barber, and then he gets guns, and then the DeBeer brothers show up.
Yeah.
With their gun, like there's like, and then other townspeople ends up showing up with their guns, like, and I that's probably it for me, and that was like a fist bump moment of just like, get the jump on them. Yeah, it didn't stop the cops from getting massacred, which I was kind of hoping for. I was hoping that, because again, it's one of those things you just expect. They're going to go in, they're going to wipe all these cops out. I thought they're going to grab Luke, and then Tim's going to have to try to get him back or whatever.
Yeah, chase him down.
And I thought it would, of course, end up at the Institute. That was just all. So he went different than I thought he would. But there was just part of me, it's like, God, upset expectations. Just don't let all these cops get fucking killed. Like,
yeah,
there was just part of me was just hoping, and it doesn't. But at least it stops. Like, they get stopped in their tracks, and then it lets the story kind of spin in a different direction, which is good. I enjoyed.
It was really nice not having just the same old.
Yeah.
Bad guys come in, bad guys kill everyone, bad guys take the main person.
Yeah.
But somehow this other main person survived, and now he's going to go after him.
Yeah.
It was really nice to see it done a little bit differently.
Yeah.
And to see, it was really kind of interesting to see Zigsby get humiliated. Like, you got all these trained professionals, you got your ass kicked by a bunch of hicks from South Carolina. Yeah, fuck you, lady. Who are you?
Yeah.
And she's like, well, you can't treat me this way.
Yeah.
And then again, finger in the bullet hole.
Yeah. I have to throw out for my favorite characters, at least an honorable mention to Orphan Annie too.
She was great.
I did love her a lot. She was awesome. And her serape and everything was
the flag of Uganda.
Yeah. And also emotional for me again. I did kind of have a reaction to his parents being killed, just because again, there was just part of me. It's like, okay, they're bringing their guns for defense or potentially to cover up if they have to, but like the parents are asleep, they'll grab the kid and fucking run, So like just kind of maybe again hoping against hope, but that when they did get killed, I was just like, fuck, like it had like a vocal reaction. So I have to at least mention that.
Yeah.
So some people are complaining about political kind of stuff. Did you feel? Are you aware of any of that at all to start? Any of the complaints? Okay, I don't think it's been like necessarily like derided the book, but if you went and looked at the Amazon reviews, you'll see some of it. But I thought it'd be an interesting test on you if you were not aware. Did you feel the book was overly political in any way?
No.
Okay, some people are just like, okay, so it's projecting, in my opinion. King's been very active on social media and talking about politics and being very expressing his views, and people that don't hold those same views have been fairly unkind to King, and I think that in a lot of ways they're now projecting that onto this book. This book does mention some real political figures, but I don't think that at any point it was ever like piling on or for me, I mean, I have no dog in the race in that way. But yeah, there's some people that are complaining like, oh, King's just getting way too political, and like, he's just like old bitter like man that wants to like add his political views in the books, and I'm just like, I just wanted to throw it out there if you saw it, because I'm even
less political than you, so
I certainly know that he threw some stuff in there. He mentioned some names and stuff,
but
like
at the end
reference the 2016 election, but like I don't think that he like got preachy at all. Like I mentioned earlier, like reflecting reality. You can reflect reality in art, preachy or not preachy. And I think not preachy is when you're doing it well, where you're letting your art reflect reality and make people think on things. And I just feel like in the same way here, I don't think that at all King got preachy in this. I think that people are just projecting like maybe his social media stuff even. Because he hasn't pulled any punches on social media. And again, I know you're not on like Twitter, so you're probably not seeing it. But yeah, he's definitely throwing stuff out there. Where it's like, I can see where some people might be pissed if they believe differently than him. But I wanted to ask that. How do you feel about it being adapted for a limited series?
Because it's not one that's going to be like, high on my list of, I got to watch that, like 111-22-63 or Castle Rock or anything like that.
Yeah.
I'll watch it, but it's not going to be one that's going to be like, oh, yeah, this drops tomorrow, I have to watch it.
Yeah, because, dude, I'm just like, after reading it, I'm like, I don't know how the fuck they're going to adapt this, dude. Like, a whole good portion of this is just torturing children. Like, how in God's name are you going to do that as a show?
Yeah.
Like, I'm at a loss. Like, I'm almost certain that they probably signed their contract on this having not read the book, because at this point, every King book gets got for an adaptation. But it just makes me think like, man, if I was a screenwriter and I was handed this book and saying, hey, we're adapting this, I'd be like, oh, God, that's a tough one.
What do you want me to do with this?
Yeah, it's like, are we just going to like torture kids for a couple episodes, like have Dupre for a couple episodes and then have like all the stuff at the end? But like, good Lord, man, like this is going to be a bleak series. I mean, even outside, even the escape, like, is going to be brutal to the kid. You're going to have like the gassing the kid. I mean, just there's a lot of shit in this book that's like, God, dude, this isn't going to be as enjoyable as like, and I can't say the Outsider is overly enjoyable, but like, the Outsider is pretty bleak as well in a lot of ways. But dude, I'm looking forward to that, and there's some obvious reasons why. But this one, I'm like, God, I don't know what to expect with what they're going to do with it. So how does this fit into the Dark Tower series? I think that's a question I generally like to ask on these. I said, and then the second part of the question, if there's no overt connections, how do you see being connected in your head canon? We already kind of talked about this.
Yeah.
Because we thought it would be beam breakers. They're ultimately not. And I don't think we've really even hit that too hard yet, but they're not. This has nothing to do with beams. This has nothing to do with the Crimson King. Everything that we had kind of been jazzed about at first didn't pay off in that way. So in your head, do you fit this in as just like another level of the tower and it has no other connection? Yeah, yeah. Now, the question I would have is, does their BDNF test, is that usable by the Crimson King, or, I don't know. Maybe the True Knot, if they were to get their hands on that database, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, like, because it does. They have some abilities in this as the system that we didn't see previous. Yeah, so I don't know if I really have a lot of connections to it. Like I said earlier, maybe a thing where, like, down the road, if the tower doesn't get reset too quickly, Flag might eventually get to where he's going further down the barrel for telepaths and, whatever to be beam breakers. Eventually he might show up in this world to grab these kids and maybe just raid like every fucking thing at once and take all the kids. But like, I don't have any heavy things in my head where it's like, this is definitive,
Yeah.
Let's see. Yeah, and I mentioned the with the beam breakers, Crimson King. So one of the big questions is the system of the Institute right?
No.
In their
no.
What they're doing, I guess.
No. Luke points out the flaw in it, and I'm going to trust the smart kid in this one. If they're going that far in advance, there's too many variables for their equation to be accurate.
Yeah.
They're wasting children on possibilities, not concluded facts. If I was to come to you and said, hey, if we slaughter these 500 kids, there's a 1% chance we could cure cancer. Is that something that you do? When you say, hey, if we slaughter these 500 kids, there's a 99% chance we're going to cure cancer. That's a different question.
Yeah.
For me, Luke points out the flawed nature of the Institute, saying that, yes, you're looking at things, but you're looking at things in the far future when you've only tested people for the near future.
Yeah.
Hey, predict what movie's going to score high at the box office next week. Who's going to win the baseball game? That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That's not world-changing events. That's not, the same thing as subjecting these kids to torture and death for what you think might happen. And he's like, no, we know it's going to happen. It's like, but how do you know that? Like, so for me, no, they're not right.
So I would say that the points I would say that would make me argue the other way, and I don't know that I fully argue the other way. I think it's more just like
devil's advocate here.
The points that came to my mind where I'm like, okay, I could at least see that side of things.
Yeah.
First one is that it is a worldwide thing and it's being done by multiple governments. Not necessarily saying that makes it right, but it makes it far less shady. If every country, like, it kind of reminded me a little bit of Sum of All Fears. I don't know if you remember that movie or not, but Jack Ryan, he gets involved with Morgan Freeman's character, and he ends up kind of basically revealing to him, I have this back channel with someone in the Kremlin, and we basically, make sure that things don't go off the rails. Like, the two of us, we're friends, but we're on opposite sides of, the Cold War, essentially. Because this movie takes place just after the Cold War, but it's like, this is someone that we've talked for a long time, and you end up finding out who it is. It's this old Russian guy, and basically they're just winking a nod. Yeah, technically, during the course of even that movie, Russia and America are about to go to war, but these two are basically under the radar, communicating with each other, trying to influence things down versus up. And it just makes me think, like, that a little bit with this, where it's like all these governments are involved. Because I feel like if it was just America, then it turns into a thing where it's like, is it the what's that fucking thing the CIA did? Project Ultra that created the Unabomber, Ted Kaczynski. Or like where it's just some off the rails psychotic fucking whatever, or the Germans, like if it's like just Operation Paperclip that the Americans got some Germans over and it's shit that Hitler was doing and now we're using it, then it feels way more shady to me. But when they mention that, like, hey, just like Project or like Yalta, the freaking Yalta conference, there was also one in Buenos Aires, and like the government's all outlined their versions of this, and it's been refined and stuff. It makes it to me where it's like, if that many people are buying into it, maybe there's something to it. You know what I mean? Like, because it is more. If King wanted to make it completely objectionable and like the most horrific thing where nobody can ever side with it, I would say just make it where it's just America that's doing it. There's no proof. Nobody else knows about it. Other countries would go to war if they found out about it. It's just this thing where it's like, are you fucking nuts? But with everyone involved, it makes me at least go a little bit closer to the side of like, maybe there's something to this. Again, not that I fully buy it, but a little bit like if I have the spectrum and the scale, it makes me move a couple of spaces down the scale is one point.
It doesn't change the fact that the whole formula that it's based off of is flawed. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if the whole world's buying into it or not. For me, it simply is that, yes, you can have multiple nations, but multiple nations have gone along with stupid ideas before just because it sounded good on paper. The problem is that Luke points out the major flaw with their plan and their way of doing things. So that's for me. That's where it draws the line. If you're doing something to better the world at the expense of others, where are we? I mean, that's square one. See, a bad guy trait.
I just hit one thing in my head. So that was an earlier thing we talked about was like more. What would he add more to the book? What I would love to hear from the Institute side is 9/11. How did that happen? Like in terms of like, I would love like 6B in her head mentally to be going through like what happened there. Like
if
whatever it is.
If we had kids that year, instead of the
maybe
the outbreak of measles killing everyone.
Yeah, something just because like in my head it's like, okay, if you are averting like nuclear disasters, you're like they're taking out a bomb builder, like they're doing good things, against bad people. So it just makes me wonder like, what happened there? Did one slip by you?
It's like, the same thing. It's the same thing with like I brought this up when me and you talked about Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman set in World War I. Okay, Diana, how the fuck did you let Hitler get where he was? Like, in what universe does Diana, of Themyscira, let the Jews get slaughtered? I mean, like, for fuck's sake, come on.
Yeah.
It's just like, it goes along those lines with like, like what you're talking about. With okay, so we have 9/11. I mean, there's been horrific things that have happened.
That another event that maybe they affected is the Bay of Pigs, because like that we basically came like that was like the closest we've come to nuclear Armageddon with the Russians. Like, maybe the Institute had something to do with that. And just that's more headcanon. But I would really like to see like if I was to expand on it, like 9/11. That's the sole outlier since World War II of like, not that the bad things haven't happened otherwise, like, on different scales, but like massive scale, like.
Thousands of people died.
That's like one of the and like
and it threw us back into the Middle East.
Yeah, threw us into war stuff. So it just part of me, it's like it seems to me like that's the big one on the scoreboard where I'm like, what happened there?
Can you explain this one to me?
You've got other ones. You've got the Atlanta bombings. You've got a lot of terrible shit that's happened. But that's the one where it's like, Jesus, like hundreds of thousands of people have died at the, as a result of these wars, the wars and the 9/11, like people are still dying from the attacks, now the cancer is getting people and stuff. So that would be if I were to like ask King, like, hey, expand it more, like that'd be one where I'm like, explain to me 9/11. Cause that's maybe one, not a plot hole, but I'd really like to know like what happened there. But that's a little digression. I guess the other thing I would mention in terms of when you talk about the kids is, and it's funny because I just started watching Infinity War. I'm watching it in bits. But this kind of goes into that, but ultimately it comes from Star Trek. Before that is needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. So like in terms of like to slightly justify the children, like you said, the cancer thing, that's an age-old thing. It's like you had to, kill, 15 children, but you're going to cure cancer. Like, You know, like that seems like, and it turns like this, like in Infinity War, it's like they're arguing about trading lives, right? And then like Cap kind of makes his little step, but then Vision's like, well, what about you? You're put your life down to save 70 some odd million people. Like, how is this any different? You know, in my view, he kind of owned Cap in that argument, because it's like, why is it okay for you, but you're not going to allow me the same choice?
The thing is that it's your choice, and Vision was trying to make that choice. Here's where the problem lies with that. You're not giving these kids that choice. The choice is not theirs. If you go to 15 kids and you say, hey, America, we need 15 volunteers who will cure cancer, you are going to get killed in the experiments. That's one thing.
Yeah.
But to go and kidnap 15 kids and kill them to get that research, that's what makes you a bad guy.
Okay.
That's the difference there, is that there is no choice. If you would come to Luke and you would come to him with the formula and you would come to him with the proposition and you explain to him what's going to happen, if he drops off the map and goes with you and they can prove their science to him and he chooses to go, I'm 100% on board with the Institute. That's Luke's choice then at that point.
Yeah.
That's Vision's choice. Vision's not condemning 70 million people to death. Vision's choosing what to do with his own person.
Yeah.
That's the difference there. And
So-
that's where the problem lies.
And it's funny because I had a very similar discussion in my head. Because I know the other side of the argument too, right? So ultimately, what it came to though, and this is like maybe one of the things that made me the most like, holy shit, is how is this any different than the military draft? You know, ultimately you take young people, in some cases, you know, you could say arbitrarily that somebody's not a kid at 18 anymore, but like in some cases
He can't smoke.
Yeah.
He can't drink.
Yeah. Like, yeah.
He can't.
And even like developmentally, there's people that are just like, man, you know, kid, you know, like 18 to 21, even like there's some developmental areas that 18, maybe they shouldn't be allowed to X, Y, or Z. You know, I'm not going to get into the
That's why they set the drinking age at 21 in America, is because they believe that your brain's not fully developed.
Yeah.
And so if you drink adolescence alcoholism, drink before you hit that point,
yeah,
it's going to mess up your brain.
Yeah.
So that's where it's like, to your point, they're not fully functioning adults yet.
Yeah. And then to sign up for like the military. So you basically, whether they want to or not, with the case of the draft, which we don't have now, I get that. But I mean, how many people have been drafted in the 20th century that were drafted in like Vietnam very unwillingly?
Yeah.
You put them through boot camp, which basically is the whole point, is to break them down and then rebuild them back up into what you want, right? In a soldier. Like that's what boot camp's about. Like, and then ultimately what's their payoff is then to be sent to the front lines of a war and potentially lose their life, or, you know, lose their mind, lose their body, like, so ultimately that was one of those things where it hit me where I'm just like, not that necessarily like maybe King was being analogous. Like, if this was written in like the 60s or 70s, I'd be like, I wonder if this is like, but ultimately it comes down to like, there's even people now that say, oh, the draft should still be a thing, but it's like, you know, I'm not even gonna get into like the like whatever of that, but like there is part of me that's like, man, like we've done the draft and we've needed to, you know, to save the world, right? World War II, or like save liberty in Vietnam, whatever, like reasons. But it's like, I guess the ultimate, when that hit me, I was just like, well, how is that any different than this? Like, and that's where I was just like, okay. And I guess that's kind of the moral question. And again, I'm not even in the position where I'm saying I do agree with them. I'm just saying I can see where this is coming from. But I don't know. Yeah, it's not like I agree. It's more just like I can at least see some of the arguments based on just those points that I had there. So if the last question was the moral one, how about on the facts? Is the Institute right? Are you worried about the future of this world, of this book? Like, now that it's not there, because I feel like King did a good job of allowing that to be somewhat ambiguous, and there is the worry on Luke's side of like, hey, I did undo this, like, did I just destroy the world? Like, you know, and I feel like King did a great job of not defining that. You know, he gives you both sides of the argument, but from your perspective, are you worried about that world, or do you think it's going to go on fine, or do you think that there is something lost there?
Maybe something is lost, but at the end of the day, it's human nature to have those things happen.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be meddling with it. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen, you know. That, you know, it's kind of like what is it, Terminator 3, where it's like it was bound to happen no matter what you did.
Inevitable.
Your fate is your fate kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that's where, for me, what I would say to Luke is like, look, no matter what, it was going to happen. Whether it was now, whether it was 50 years from now, whether it was 100 years from now, this was going to happen.
Yeah.
Our fate is our fate, that kind of thing. That is one way of looking at it. The other way also is that, they're fucked.
Yeah.
They've been stopping people from that. I think that Luke's argument is wholly overlooked by Bill Smith and the Institute. And I think that Luke's variables is going to make it to where some things will happen, but it will not be as disastrous as the Institute makes it out to be.
Okay.
I think that it's not one or the other. I think it's somewhere in the middle.
Okay.
That Luke's variables and Luke's correction to the equation, you guys are not looking at, when you're testing people, you're not looking that far out. Yes, this man may end up being president and may end up being the person who starts World War III. But at this point in his life, there's a decision that he has to make that will decide whether or not he's going to be president and start World War III, or if he's just going to be president and then be a no-name president that doesn't even go down in the history books that kids don't remember.
Yeah.
And that's where it's a 50-50 for that. You're saying that doesn't exist because you're just looking past that to the one outcome that could be there. But that's where Luke says, no, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
You're not looking at everything. You're looking at an end point.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like the Thanos argument. Hey, I did a good thing. I snapped my fingers. Half the universe is gone, but the other half is going to thrive now. But he says it in Endgame, but now you guys live with the memory, and I didn't think that you guys would be ungrateful. But who's not going to be ungrateful when they have that kind of scarring?
Yeah.
You hurt someone that bad, it's going to leave a wound, it's going to leave a scar, it's going to leave a reminder.
Yeah.
And everything. And so for me, what I think it is it's not going to be the Institute's outcome, and it's not going to be Luke's outcome saying that they're 100% wrong. I think it's going to be somewhere in the middle, that some shit may happen, but a lot of the shit isn't going to. So that's
okay.
Probably me being optimistic.
So you're not necessarily deathly concerned for that world.
No.
But you're not unconcerned.
No, I think
that
there's going to be some shit that's going to happen, but I don't think that it's going to be like world ending. Like the Institute makes it out that, well, if we don't do what we do, the world's going to end. No,
Yeah.
I don't believe that.
It's funny as you were talking, it kind of just hit me. And in a way, it kind of maybe questions what you just said there, does the invention of nuclear weapons change the equation? Like let's just say if this had even been discovered in the First World War, but they didn't really use it, and then Second World War happened, but then nukes, that completely changes the
of course.
I mean, that's the shit that people always bring up in elections, whether it's legitimate or not. That like, oh, do you really want this person with the fucking that's the main thing, right? Do you want them in charge of our nuclear arsenal? It's never about our military, or it's never like, but it's always the new. So is there some element of the equation change of you say like things that happen with humanity, but like suddenly now when you give humanity a gun, on a large scale, right? Nukes are like, this is something that could blow the entire planet away. Like, does that change the equation at all? And again,
let's be perfectly honest.
I'm not even asserting. I'm just asking, does that change the equation?
Well, no, but the big thing is that nukes doesn't necessarily mean global disaster. That's a very common. It's a very common overstatement that if one nuke flies, they're all going to fly.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but we've already seen it in our human history. So I'm not talking fiction. In our human history, where people don't want to push the button.
Yeah.
We have the story of the Russian guy who got the code that the Americans had fired a missile. It is time to retaliate. Push the button. And he flat refused to do it.
Yeah, but
I don't believe that just because if we nuke Russia or Russia nukes us, that Pakistan and India are going to nuke each other, that France is going to launch nukes, that UK is going to... I don't believe that's going to happen. Okay. I believe what's going to happen...
I'm more cynical. I think it will.
No, that's the thing is like, that's a movie trope. If the nukes fly, the nukes fly. Everyone launches their nukes. I like King's version of it in 11/22/3. Hey, Hanoi Hell, we dropped a nuke. But that didn't mean that the rest of the world was nuked.
Well, I mean... he used it in 11/22/3. The president that was there used it before most other countries had them.
Right.
So,
but at the end of the day, other countries did still have it when he dropped it. So that's the thing. Is like it didn't end up being a nuclear Armageddon, and the entire world gets knocked out.
Yeah, but like
I believe that in what we have here with human nature, we've already seen that humans don't want that. I mean, we have people talking all the time about decommissioning nuclear weapons, lowering nuclear arsenals down, and everything like that.
They also say they don't want wars, and those never stop.
No,
so
it's true. It's true. But at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, if France gets into a tussle with Russia and France nukes Russia, I don't see any reason why we would jump in and instantly nuke.
I'm not sure that would be us, but I think like you mentioned India and Pakistan, I would absolutely see those two just going nuts on each other.
Because France nuked Russia?
Yeah, it opens the floodgates.
Why?
Because
why does it open the floodgates if it doesn't directly impact either one of them?
Because they both want to use it, but
so,
you don't.
If they want to use it, they're going to use it. They would have done it already.
No, because they'd be concerned about retaliations of everyone else going
against them. They have no dog in the fight. It's France versus Russia.
No, if they were the first, but if you're the first to launch, the thought process is most of the world's going to turn on you.
So why don't they do it now? Why haven't they? How long has Pakistan and India?
Well,
had
because
nukes?
if they did now, the whole world would go agaast them and potentially
it's the same
them.
thing that'll be happening then.
No, because then
even if France nukes Russia,
no, because then what happens is like if two of the other not big necessarily, but two nations start fighting. Now suddenly you're able to slip in a punch without everyone noticing. It's like the whole barroom scene of like a Western, right? Like whether everyone has their guns out. Like once the first shot goes off, now suddenly like me and you that are just in the corner with a beef about a card game, now my gunshot's far less noticeable than it would have been before the two guys.
Do you think that America still wouldn't notice if Bombay got nuked by Pakistan, if Russia got nuked
but
by France?
How much of a concern is that when?
Do you think that we don't have enough nukes to split between the two?
I think we would.
I don't think that's a logical argument there. That they launched a nuke. Well, fuck. Let's go take out that guy then.
Yeah,
I don't think that's a logical. I don't think that's a logical argument.
I do. I really think that.
Why? There's no reason why they would. This same retaliation is still going to be there. Especially if like the UK or France or one of our allies, America's allies, is the one that throws the first punch.
Let's just say Russia bombed France.
Okay.
We're not going to waste a single nuke on anyone outside of Russia because they are now like we're the two big hitters. We're the two with the most nuclear weapons on the planet. Like we're not going to waste any if Bombay gets nuked. Like it's because the more you throw, if you throw any to the side people, Russia now has one less nuke. I honestly
How
believe
many nukes do we need to bomb Russia?
I really believe that.
Do we need the thousands to wipe out Russia? No, we need 7.
I mean, ultimately, hopefully, this never is any kind of thing. But I really do believe if they did, I think there'd be a lot of small people that have them that would use them. I think even Israel, like I think that they'd be concerned about invasion. They would just start nuking all their neighbors to basically preemptively defend themselves. But I do think that at least that could be an argument that it does change the equation a tiny bit because now, like world disaster in terms of like World War I is disastrous, but it is still like controllable. Nuclear disaster just puts you in a realm where now it's like the tightrope. You don't have the safety net anymore. Now suddenly what could be a catastrophic war that devastates countries for fucking generations, now it could be even worse to where now you're talking like cataclysmic. So
we make that country unlivable for 150 years.
Yeah, it's just one of those like I would question like does that change the equation? And I don't even know if King thought about that, but ultimately because I guess they discovered it from Nazis, right? So like they could, but it is an interesting thing. Does it change because that if nukes didn't exist, that level of tower that nukes never got discovered in that way, never split the atom, is it a far less dangerous world? And maybe the Institute, they don't put as much, maybe they don't even invest in it as the rest of the whole world coming together going, maybe the whole world came together in the Institute's world and went, we have a different world now. We really should like be figuring some shit out. We discovered this like little thing that Germany was doing. We should all do this. Like, I don't know. It's just a thought I had because you mentioned something that sparked my brain and that's what happens. So what do you imagine happened with the staff members that we get no resolution on?
I think the Institute cleans house.
Do you think any of them are around though? Like Stackhouse, I feel like they fucking book it.
No,
I feel like they're gone.
I think they're gone. I think the Institute's going to have to hunt them down to keep them quiet. That's what I picture.
Do you think they would though? Do you think those people would be a danger?
Potentially.
I think some would be because I feel like there's the difference.
And that's where I don't think the Institute's going to take a chance with any of them. It's just going to be if you were there, You're on the
because I think there's some that were just like they were doing their job, they like it was the pay, whatever. But I think then there was like the zealots that were just like they truly believed it. In terms of like if the Institute got restarted, there would be certain people would be the first ones in line to be like, okay, I believe in this mission, I want to be part of it. I think Stackhouse is one of them.
Stackhouse was one that was wanting to run.
Well, once it was falling down, though. But I think like if it were to be reinstated, I think he'd be because I think he believed in what they were doing. I don't think he was just a dude that was just getting a paycheck. I think he just had an exit strategy in terms of like if something ever went wrong, I'm not fucking going down with this ship. I'm going to end up in Argentina or something like that.
Yeah.
Because it is interesting we didn't really get resolution. Same with the narc kid. What was her name? The one that manipulated Avery.
Yeah.
Like we don't really get any resolution on her, but that would actually perturb me a tiny bit because I'm just like you gave that whole thing where she ends up being like the traitor to the kids and stuff, and you could have at least given me something to show her die. But yeah, with the staff, I'm not totally sure, but I can see what you're saying. They might just wipe them all out. Now,
I think that from a government standpoint, I mean, let's be perfectly honest. You're gonna clean the ledger.
Do you think they start this back up or try? I mean, they mentioned that they're basically. I can't remember if it was Smith that says it or whether it's them thinking, like the good guys thinking, but they basically say like it's a different day and age now than it was in the 50s. There's probably no way for them to rebuild this. So it's kind of a positive look on it, but do you think that's reality though, or do you think that they actually are just going to?
I think they're just lying to Luke and Tim to try and get them off the scent. They already have another institute in America.
Yeah.
So I think it's gonna.
That's the one that killed all they killed themselves, right?
Yeah, I think it's gonna still
mass
go
suicide.
Again. Yeah.
Which that's now the last question on the list here. Sequels are relative. You kind of alluded to this a little bit. Are relatively rare in King's Pantheon. We know he's done some recently, but overall they don't happen very much. Would you like to see a sequel of some or continuation of this? Maybe not a sequel, but a continue because like The Outsider, in a way, allows a continuation of the Hodges trilogy, but it's not really. I wouldn't even call it a follow up to the Hodges trilogy. I would just say it's a different vessel for certain things to
different characters
show up and
like
stuff.
That, yeah.
So would you want to see a continuation of maybe not even like a full book on like trying to rebuild the Institute or we're going to find whatever, but just would you want to see more of this world in some way, even if it's like tertiary to like a different story, but this kind of gets.
I think one and done is good for this one.
Okay.
I don't think there's really. This goes back to the.
So you like the open-ended kind of.
Yeah, this goes back to the age-old question. I heard it on a podcast back when John Wick 2 was coming out. Is the sequel going to add anything to the world? And I don't think that we're going to get anything that's going to be like world-changing.
I think 2 did a good job. John Wick's case, I know it's a tangent, but I think that added a little bit because it added some more to the thing.
It did. And that was the example that they gave. It's like, at what point does it just shift from your world building to
just sequels,
cash grab?
Yeah.
And I think that for the Institute, I don't think there's enough there that you can constitute being like, I know you want to know more about the Institute, but it's the same thing for me with the shop from Firestarter.
Yeah, that's
or
true.
from like the government panel, the White Commission with Carrie.
Yeah,
I want to read more about that.
Yeah,
is there a way that King can write a book to do
the
that?
Stand. I mean, I would love to follow up on The Stand. Even I get you. So if let's just say King came to you and said, "Hey, Peter, I am going to write something that's going to, in some ways, follow up the Institute." Would you, and he asked you your opinion, would you want to see the same characters or would you want to see it more in the realm of like a different, like kind of like The Outsider way of like something totally different that allows.
No, you got to keep the same characters because
like, do you want to see Luke
I want to get
and
to
Tim?
know, I want to get to know Tim better.
Okay.
So that would be
so
actually,
you would want to see
that would be the only reason why a sequel would work is if
so you'd want a sequel versus a continuation.
Yes.
I'll make those the differentiations.
Yes.
Sequel and continuation. You'd want a sequel.
I would want a sequel. I wouldn't want a continuation because
okay.
I want to know more about Luke and Tim and what happens with them and everything like that.
Okay.
A continuation, when I don't get a good conclusion, like I did with the Hodges trilogy, is going to be salt in the wound of not knowing.
And see, me, I might like a continuation because it would at least allow you might almost have a main character that like you think is good, but then it turns out he ends up being involved in the next Institute, and then through him you kind of see this rebuild, and like you end up getting like kind of what I was saying earlier we lacked in this one was the Institute side of the story. And then maybe even like Luke comes in, but he's more of an outside force, but like he's not the main character. I don't know. So maybe that would still be a sequel, it would just be written differently. But I like the idea of finding out more about the Institute without necessarily subjecting, because that's the way I look at it with like Luke. I don't want to subject the kid anymore. I would hate to see him go through more shit.
What would actually be really interesting to do for a sequel idea is the Institute decides to restart up, but to use Luke as the header, the center pin. Okay, we still need to do this, Luke, but we need to figure out a way to do it where you're on board and you're going to help us, because obviously you're smart enough to figure this out. How can you help us do it where it's moral?
They actually could easily. I could tell you right off the bat, just do it to where you cycle the kids in and out, because then they wouldn't get fried.
Yeah.
And let it be a thing where they're just like, you go to the parents and be like, hey, we can't tell you.
You make it like a. Did you ever read Ender's Game?
No.
Look, if your kid fits this bill, they go here. Period.
Yeah.
Because it is for the greater good. Like, it's something that.
What if it was even this? Like, let's say you're even a father. What if the government comes to you and says, we can't tell you any details, but your kid's talented. We need him. We believe it's very important. We're going to give you $500,000. She's going to come with us for a couple months and then come back. And then in a few years, she'll come for a couple months. And, but then it's cycled in out to where it's not going to cause harm to the child. They're going to try to do like some of the things because ultimately the experimentation stuff is where all the torture came from.
Yeah.
And that was just them trying to expand things. What if they weren't doing that? What if they were just strictly doing the targeted shit?
And that's what I'm saying is, what if Luke helps them develop a way to do that? And
you pay the parents to where now like the parents and the kids and maybe make it like Chernobyl, right? Like it was limited. Everyone had X amount of time they could be on that roof before they were done, and they left the fucking whole area because they were tapped out for their yearly quota for radiation. Do the same thing. Figure, like, you probably already have the data on how much it is before the kids fry. So just know, hey, we can do this many movies with a kid before they're fried. Well, let's step that back 25% or 50%,
so we know that they're not going to have any lasting trauma,
and just tell the parents like, hey, 50 million or 500 million or 500,000 each time we do this, we're gonna have your kid 3 times over the next 4 years, like, because now it's beneficial to everyone. They're serving their country, you're keeping your secrecy, and you're not trying to expand their stuff, so you're not putting them through the torture and stuff. You're just having them do then
you have
deed,
willing participants who are doing, like, God's work, or for my country, that patriotism, which I think is something that's lacking in this day and age, patriotism. But it's something that it very well could be used still if you explain it, especially if you go to a kid and explain it to a kid. Hey, 12-year-old kid, you can save the world. And all you have to do is watch a movie and think about something.
Yeah. Now, the only question that would come in, though, is like, ultimately your earlier argument is that is this even a legitimate form of anything?
And that's where I think that could be the first part of the book, is Luke figuring out, okay, what's the exact science here? What can we do to make this more precise?
Yeah.
Is there a way that we can influence people without having them killed?
Yeah.
Instead of us taking presidential candidate Tad and having him hang himself, what if we take presidential Tad and make him realize that, hey, you know what? You're not going to want to nuke China. Something like that. Something along those lines. Yeah, that would be a pretty compelling sequel. Well, you have to introduce a bad guy who's actually doing it to try and get, to the Institute to come back to where it was, or something like that.
Yeah.
Something along those lines.
Yeah.
Because otherwise the story's just going to be boring.
Yeah.
There's going to be no real drama.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, that's the only way I could see a sequel really working. So that's why I say, for me, standalone.
Yeah, and I think I'm with you. I think overall now, especially talking it out, like, not that there was a whole lot, like there was some open-ended stuff that I'm like, God, I would love to know more. But like at the same time, when it really comes down to like the nitty-gritty of actual storytelling, don't know if it's worth it. I think I'd probably rather just leave it as it is and move on.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I agree. Probably no on a sequel, but not because it's not interesting. Like, there is some interesting stuff, but it's just not worth.
There's not a whole story there to tell.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe a short. Maybe a short story.
The Institute Files.
Like we have we just on our last roundtable we covered that one of the short stories in the new
is going to have Holly
series is going to and talking about Ralph too. So yeah, that's interesting. So yeah, that's it for the discussion. It's actually funny because we've had kind of a long, or actually we have an email to read as well. So the email is from Joe from Washington. He emailed about the Institute. We didn't get a lot of emails. That's why I was like, man, maybe it was too early. And then some stuff on Twitter. He says, hi, all podslingers. Hi. He says, I just got done reading the Institute. I really enjoyed it. Concept was awesome, the characters are great, and the ending was solid. And I agree. I don't think that, like, if someone were to argue like King can never do a good ending, I'd put this one out there and say, what's wrong with this ending?
11/22/63 is the one I go to.
Yeah, I mean that was one too. But I would say if you're gonna build your roster of ones to give people, I think this would go on that roster. I don't think there's anything at all wrong with this ending. Again, it's open ended, but I think it's open ended in a good way. I'd almost think it'd be worse if everything would have just been explained and whatever. I think it's cool to have unknowns a little bit, even though I want to know. He says, if anything, I wish the book would have been longer.
Common thing we're hearing.
Agreed. He says, I would like to know more about the area around the Institute, perhaps as part of Maureen's narrative. And yeah, I think that's interesting too. Like, what does that village look like? What is that nearby town? That's the kind of shit that, like, if this was a 1,000-page King book, which is almost doubling it, we would have seen. What does that city, that town look like? You know, what do the people say about it? You know, about what's going on? And then what does that place look like where they have their PX and their barracks and you know, like whatever? Like that would have been interesting. And he says, and I was surprised there wasn't anything about Derry. And I don't know, that surprised me a little bit. Like, is there? I guess I don't know how Derry would have fit in.
It gets mentioned so much when it comes to main stuff with King.
Yeah.
It is one of the most, like, tied to places for Stephen King. So yeah. I'm with him on that. I get where he's coming from.
Yeah. Shawshank could have easily got a reference as well.
I'm not going to the shank.
Yeah. He says, I was also hoping for some kind of epilogue setting up the possibility for a sequel. Maybe put the reader into the middle of the rainforest or the desert and encounter the lisping man overseeing the construction of a new institute and having it be a dream that Luke's having. Which, yeah, I mean, that could, if you wanted to have like an epilogue, even if it wasn't even a sequel, but at least give you a little bit more to allude to, like, this isn't over.
Yeah.
That would have been an interesting epilogue. That's a good point, Joe. He says, I also was really hoping for a Dark Tower tie-in before it was revealed that the kids' roles actually was. I was waiting for some kind of twist where they were being trained and or drugged to become some kind of super breakers. And that would have been really cool. And yeah, I think that's ultimately what we've been speculating on since we got the synopsis for this story. So now one small tangential question in the middle of his email here. Does it disappoint you, the fact that we kind of anticipated that and it didn't happen? Does that at all reflect poorly on the book?
Not for me.
No, yeah, same for me. Like, there was part of me that's man, not Dark Tower, but whatever. Like,
not everything can be.
Exactly. But I mean, dude, I remember when we first got the synopsis, dude, we were fucking
breakers.
Drooling. We're like, dude, this is fucking breakers. Like, this is involved. Like, it has to be. This is too close. He says, anyhow, I appreciate you guys, what you guys do, and look forward to every episode. Keep up the good work. Thank you, Joe. Appreciate that. And he signs off, Joe from Washington State.
Thanks, Joe.
But then he has a little tweak here for PS on your end a little bit.
Oh, no.
He says, you'll probably hate me for this. And he says, especially Peter. But I really want to see, or I don't really want to see Aaron Paul play Eddie. Your head kind of whipped really sharply there. He says, but not because I don't think that he wouldn't be good at it. In fact, I think he'd be amazing. I just don't want to see Jesse from Breaking Bad and Dark Tower. I want to see Eddie Dean. Jesse was such an iconic character that I think Aaron Paul as Eddie would be distracting. It seems like I'd be waiting for him to call Roland a bitch every sentence. I think it'd be cool to find a more unknown entity to play Eddie. There have been so many great series of late where relatively unknown actors have come in pretty heavy with pretty heavy roles and nailed them out of the park.
He's not wrong.
I could totally say. I mean, there was part of me that was like, again, I mentioned this before. I was like, maybe he's not right. He's getting kind of old. But then, like, El Camino, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm totally okay with it.
You're back.
Yeah, but I can see. I can't see what he's saying.
He's not wrong.
Because
I'm not going to ever say that you're wrong about that. But I will say that Aaron Paul is such a good actor that I think that he could make Jesse Pinkman disappear.
Yeah,
and Eddie come out.
Yeah.
That's going to be the only thing I say about that. I'm not disagreeing with you. I know in my heart of hearts that most likely I'm not going to get Aaron Paul as Eddie ever.
Yeah.
That if we do get an Eddie Dean, it is going to be someone else.
Yeah.
First off, if they try to get Aaron Paul, they are going to have to pay for it. I know he wants to play the role, but he is a very talented actor and a very highly regarded actor.
Yeah.
whenever you have that, you are always going to pay more.
Yeah.
For a series, especially that's what we're potentially looking at with the Amazon series. That's where it's Joe, right?
Yeah.
That's what Joe made a point. A lot of lesser known actors come into these series, and that's where they make their Sam Strike.
Like Aaron Paul, he made
in Breaking Bad.
Yeah, he made his mark.
Sam Strike is cast in Dark Tower.
Yeah.
Not a huge actor to play our main character.
Yeah.
So,
even Flag, like he's more known, but he's not anywhere near like an all-star.
Not a Matthew
actor.
McConaughey.
Yeah, he's not Matthew McConaughey.
So,
yeah, I agree, and I would say just as a aside a little bit in terms like because like I said, I totally see where he's coming from, and I even slightly agree, but I think I still kind of would love to see Aaron Paul, and the only reason would be is because one of the reasons I didn't get into Breaking Bad early on is because I looked at Bryan Cranston and went, that's the fucking dad from Malcolm in the Middle, and that's a dude from fucking Seinfeld. There's no way I could take that guy seriously. He's too funny in those other two things, and I was proven wrong there. So there's just part of me that thinks like I think Aaron's talented enough to make it disappear, and I think they would go out of their way to make sure that he doesn't do any kind of Jesse-isms in terms of like writing, and he certainly wouldn't insert them himself. But I do get what you're saying, because I've always been in a huge thing about when it comes to television, there's something about iconic television that is so hard to get out from under. Like, it just is. It's really hard to escape.
It's not just television either. I mean, it's movies. I mean, both of us are we've gone on record and said this. We were both adamant that Heath Ledger was going to make a fucking terrible Joker.
Yeah.
We're like, he's going to be dog shit. He's only ever done romantic comedies. He's only ever done comedies. He's never really done anything serious. There's no way he's going to take the Joker, make him serious, and be good. And we both have gone on and admitted we were wrong. Heath Ledger was brilliant.
Yeah.
And that's where, for me, it stopped there.
But I would say, like, in terms of the iconic conversation, it doesn't happen in movies a lot. There isn't very often that you get a character that gets such an iconic connection through a movie. It's for some reason TV it happens though. Like James
because you get more of
like
them.
James Gandolfini. Like that dude was never going to show up on screen and not be Tony Soprano. Yeah, like there's just something about it. Like what's her name that did Elaine from Seinfeld has now got Veep, but like generally speaking, it's really hard for actors to move outside of such an iconic role and actually do anything successful.
Yeah.
The other two, outside of Jerry Seinfeld hasn't done anything either. So the other three outside of Elaine have done nothing to come close to like what they did there.
Look at the Friends cast.
Yeah.
I mean, the only one that had any kind of a successful career after Friends was Jennifer Aniston. And I'm sorry, I saw the new commercials for her new show on Apple TV Plus. Apple Plus? Is that what it's called? Apple Plus
Something
or Apple
like
TV
that.
Plus?
Something, yeah.
Apple Plus. I still see Rachel.
Yeah.
She's a bitch. I still see Rachel though.
Yeah.
You know, that's just it's because
it
TV,
might be you mentioned
TV
more.
is saturated.
Yeah, you see way more of them.
You see way more of them.
You see Hannibal Lecter for 10 minutes in Silence of the Lambs, which that's an iconic one. That's one I will admit, like that's iconic, and it's hard for him to move away from that. It's hard for me to go into a movie and not think he's going to eat me. But he always pulls it off, to give him credit as an actor. But it is really hard for TV, and I think Aaron Paul as Jesse is so iconic at this point. It's one of the greatest shows of all time. That'd be really hard. And I even think Bryan Cranston's facing that a little bit. He hasn't become an A-list actor necessarily since Breaking Bad. He's done some roles, but he hasn't necessarily gone nuts because, dude, who's not going to see Heisenberg as, there? Yeah. So, yeah, that's, I guess, my answer. But I see what you're saying, and that's totally fine.
No, I'm with him.
Yeah, we're never gonna kill you for having a different opinion, but no,
I still want Aaron Paul, but I have I've accepted that I'm most likely never going to get that.
Yeah, agreed. Me too. So that's it for this episode. We'll go ahead and hit the closing stuff. It's funny, I actually thought this was going to be a short episode, but
hell no.
It's us. So I was like, this could probably be like an hour and a half episode, but here we are getting close to the 3-hour mark. So it was good though. A fun episode. So if you want to subscribe to us, you can do that on Apple Podcasting. If you want to stream us, you can do that on Stitcher. Check the show notes at darktowerpalaver.com. There will be no show notes for this episode, but for future episodes or whatever, darktowerpalaver.com is your go-to place for those, as well as the podcast also gets posted there. If for some reason you like to listen to podcasts just on your computer, go to darktowerpalaver.com. All of our episodes get posted, show up on there as well. You'll always see a post. It'll be like the show notes and a post that is like just has a audio thing. You can click the play button and listen to the episodes too. So check that all out at darktowerpalaver.com, and Peter can let you know about contact info.
You can email us. It's darktowerpalaver@gmail.com. You can follow us on Facebook. It's facebook.com/DarkTowerPalaver. Or on the Twitter, it's @DarkTowerPod. That's @DarkTowerPod. You can check out our shows on YouTube. It's youtube.com/DarkTowerPalaver. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe, and make sure to turn on notifications on your phone if that's where you're doing the YouTube subscribing, so that you get notifications when we're going live. And stay tuned next time just to make sure that we get all the details about our schedule going forward.
Yeah, next time to start the show, we'll have the calendar like normal, and if there is any adjustments in terms of time or date, we'll let you know at the top of the next show. So be looking for that. And we sign off as we always do by saying long days and pleasant nights.
Long days and pleasant nights, folks.
All right, guys, in the chat, thank you for joining us. Mark, Cody, let's see.
Alan?
We had Alan. We had a couple of the numbers popped a few times, so maybe some of the people popped in. So thank you guys for joining us. And yeah, we'll be here next in a couple weeks for Roundtable. Whatever.
Dr. Sleep.
Yeah, and then Dr. Sleep at the end. Indeed. See you guys.
Bye.